folks, I'm Matt, and welcome to the Good Trouble Show. The UAP issue remains front and center while the Pentagon tries to put the toothpaste back in the tube. At the same time, Congress is busy trying to restore congressional oversight of the issue. Now, one area that continues to be front and center is the case of the Nazca Mummies. In just a few minutes, we will be joined by a researcher who thinks that at least some of these bodies are not of human origin. It's going to be very, very interesting to say the least. But first, please hit the subscribe and thumbs up buttons on YouTube. Leave a comment and let us know what you think about this episode. You can also find us on X or Twitter at Good Trouble Show and everywhere else at The Good Trouble Show. And, you also, if you're into podcasts like everyone is, I know I am, you can find us wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Search for The Good Trouble Show with Matt Ford. We also need help keeping the lights on. You can become a Patreon member of The Good Trouble Show by going to www.patreon.com/The Good Trouble Show. Sign up, buy us a coffee, and you can support our work. Finally, Super Chats are open on YouTube, another great way to support The Good Trouble Show. I also want to thank our Patreon and YouTube members, our chat moderators who volunteer their time every Sunday to keep the chat room all nice and clean, and of course all of you at home that are watching. Thank you so much for the generosity of your time. So also, here's a chance for everyone watching to make a difference. As many of you know, I'm the Director of Strategy for the UAP Disclosure Fund, a political nonprofit that advocates for greater government transparency, supporting whistleblowers, things like that, regarding the unidentified anomalous phenomenon issues. So I'm super honored to be there. We have the team including folks like Yuan Feng, who we had on the show recently, Lou Elizondo, which of course everyone knows, Colonel Carl Nell, Dr. Garry Nolan, and Chris Mellon, just to name a few of the people that are on our board of directors and our advisory board. And we currently have a petition drive and are asking everyone who supports UAP transparency to sign it. There's absolutely no donation required. You don't have to chip in a thing. This petition, what it's going to do is it's going to send this letter to Senators Schumer, Rounds, Gillibrand, and Heinrich. And here's the letter here. So it basically says to U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, U.S. Senators Mike Rounds, Kirsten Gillibrand, Marco Rubio, Todd Young, and Martin Heinrich. From you, your name will be put on there. Honorable U.S. Senators, I'm writing to voice my support for the inclusion of new legislation in the 2025 National Defense Authorization Act that will establish a presidential review board for UAP records held by the executive branch and make recommendations for releasing these records to the public. I also support the inclusion of increased protections for whistleblowers who might come forward with important information regarding unidentified anomalous phenomenon. So go to uapdisclosurefund.org, sign the petition, and play your part in disclosure. I say time and time again, everyone that's watching the show, call your lawmakers up. Let them know that this is an important issue and that you are demanding transparency, because we certainly all deserve that. That is for sure, especially from our government, which isn't particularly transparent about much of anything, I'll say. So we need to let our lawmakers know that we demand transparency. Also, in sending this letter, it's also a message to those senators that we are paying attention and that we support their political, we'll just say, fortitude to tackle this thing. Obviously, this is such a stigmatized topic. So if you look at it from the standpoint of a politician, they are expending a huge amount of political capital on something that just has insane amounts of stigma attached to it, thanks to our friends at the CIA. Okay, moving on. Our guest today is an associate professor of teaching philosophy at Ohio State University who is interested in how the UAP topic overlaps with the philosophy of religion and is an academic team lead at the New Paradigm Institute, run, of course, by our good friend Danny Sheehan. He is here to discuss the research on the hotly debated Nazca Mummies. Please welcome Dr. Stephen Brown. Dr. Brown, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm very, very, very good. I have to say that I think my recent tweet, I don't know, was about like I don't know, like 2 weeks ago, where I said on UFO Twitter that I think a lot of folks are going to owe this Jaime Maussan, or however you say his name, an apology. Yeah. I got so much freaking blowback from that. It wasn't even funny. Well, I mean, actually, it was kind of funny. And what I meant by that, now, firstly, I know very little about this guy. I know he's kind of a bit of a showman. Like your host here, but what I meant by that for everyone that's watching is that everything that I'm hearing, and I'm hearing sort of off the record, people that kind of don't want to go public at this point, is that there truly is something to this whole thing, and that indeed it looks like some of these bodies, and of course we're going to get into that with you. That's why you're here. Some of these bodies do appear to be of they're not human. We'll say that. While at the same time, I understand there actually have been some, I don't know, what do you want to call frauds or fraudulent bodies, or I'm not sure what the right term is. I can't think of it. But anyway, that's what I meant about the comment. I know it angered a lot of people on UFO Twitter, and there was nothing meant by that. As I always say, I know. I'm so new to this topic. My knowledge is like a big piece of Swiss cheese with a bunch of holes in it. So sometimes maybe I don't say the right thing. But anyway, so regardless, thank you so much for coming on our show. So Dr. Brown, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm what's called a teaching professor, which means I don't actually have research responsibilities. I just teach a bunch of classes. I teach about 500 or 600 students a semester here at the Ohio State University. I teach classes like Asian philosophies is kind of my bread and butter class. I teach that every semester. I teach Death and the Meaning of Life, Intro Philosophy, Philosophy of Art. I teach a class called Global Flourishing. So it's a bunch of fun classes, pretty big classes, kind of general education classes that we use to get people in the door and excited about philosophy. That's my day job. I actually have been here at Ohio State since 2004. This is where I did my PhD. And there were a few years there where I was doing some nonprofit work in the kind of global justice space, working on some extreme poverty eradication stuff. I've been able to do some work with Ohio prison reform stuff, prison education, prison arts programming that I've been able to support in various ways. I worked for the Center for Ethics and Human Values here at Ohio State for a few years. So I've had a number of different jobs, but I've been at OSU in one capacity or another for, like 20 years now.
When I was in college, I was too busy drinking beer and chasing girls. I wasn't really paying attention much in school, but I watched a bit of your lecture from Ohio State about this issue, and I'm like, man, I wish I would have. You would have been a great professor to have studied under. That's for sure. And we'll put a link to your YouTube stuff. This lecture that you gave on the UAP issue and of course the mummies, man, it was really great. So speaking of mummies, before we dig into the specifics of it, let's talk about the UAP issue just from we'll just say like a general sense. So in my view, and I don't know a lot about philosophy, but it seems to me that philosophers are pretty much like critical thinkers, which to me, when I think of that, I think that is probably not going to be compatible with the UAP phenomenon, which is unpredictable, and of course we don't get to see any of the classified sensor data. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on that? Let alone the mummies of Peru. Let's talk about just the UAP issue and your views on that.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I mean, it's definitely true that if you were to walk the halls of a philosophy department and ask them, ask faculty members how many of them are taking UAP alien stuff seriously, you would get a very, very low percentage, as you would expect. That being said, I actually think philosophy is one of those disciplines that has been built around trying to do critical thinking in areas where we have kind of incomplete evidence or where there's questions about what would even constitute evidence. So as I think you mentioned at the beginning, my kind of passion has always been in the philosophy of religion. And, the arguments that come up in the philosophy of religion are ones that are built around the assumption that we're talking about issues that we don't have sensor data for, right? We don't have, photos and videos of things. We are dealing with people who have experiences of certain kinds, religious experiences, profound experiences that we need to make sense of. We're talking about the nature of the whole universe and why it exists, and it's not exactly clear how to think about evidence or reasons in that context. So actually, I think philosophy is pretty well equipped to bring some helpful insights to an issue like this.
Excellent. And yeah, I'm kind of hoping that the whole academic world turns around. Of course, we've got people like yourself that are advocating for this. We've got Dr. Garry Nolan and others. And it sure seems that from the perspective of moving the ball forward, academia, that is, I think, one of the most important areas that we have some progress on. So, okay, now tell us about, and again, as I mentioned before, my knowledge on this whole UAP thing, let alone the Nazca Mummies, is pretty minimal, I think, compared to a lot of folks. So what is the history of these things? And these things, I keep calling them mummies, but they're not really mummies, correct?
Yeah, so I think as it will become very clear today, as I kind of talk a little more and show you some of the things that we do know about them, it's really very unclear what exactly they are. But yeah, let me tell you a little bit of the backstory. So to this day, the place that they were allegedly found is not known to the public. There is a guy who gets codenamed Mario, who essentially claims to have found these things. And he brought them to an archaeologist, a French archaeologist who works in Cusco, Peru, named Thierry Jamin. And basically asking Thierry, what do you think these things are? Right? Because they're very, very strange. And then Thierry, from that point all the way to the present, has been trying to get people to do more studies on them, to take them seriously, to get more information, and very importantly, look at the information that's already been gathered, and try to figure out what exactly they are. He went early on to the Ministry of Culture in Peru and was dismissed. Basically was told that they weren't going to take these things seriously. They don't trust the people involved. And so what's happened essentially is there's now been 7 or so years worth of disjointed attempts to get some scans, get some DNA, get some various other kinds of analysis done on these things in an attempt to try to figure out what they are. So where we are right now is there's actually several different distinct groups of people who have access to different distinct groups of these bodies and are trying to do pretty serious analysis on them.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that completely makes sense. So, how many of these things exist, or do we even know how many of these bodies are there? The ones that we think are real and not assembled from human bone or animal bones or things like that.
Yeah, well, okay, so this is going to get complicated, and it's an interesting time for you to have reached out to me because my own views are slightly in flux right now. As I've kind of gotten some more information, gotten some of the initial findings of the research that's being done, I'm able to hear about, and so I'm going to share some things today that actually very, very few people know about yet. So,
awesome.
You get the scoop here.
I love it.
And I've been trying to talk around to people and kind of figure out the best way to discuss some of these things publicly, and we decided this was a decent place to share some preliminary results. So sorry, your question that I was supposed to be answering was how many of them there are. Right. And the answer is a lot. So I would say at least 50 to 60.
Wow.
And then depending on where you set the threshold for what you're taking seriously, substantially more than that. So yeah, let's say something on the order of 50 to 75 of them.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really it's really a lot. And yeah, part of the reason that I got involved and the reason that I think I am bringing some value here is just trying to be able to think clearly about what all the various things are and what the implications of each of them are. And anyways, as I say, things are very much in flux right now, but there's a lot of the little things and of, as you say, various quality, various puzzlement, amenable to different kinds of explanations. So it's it's a very puzzling tangle of stuff.
Wow. Okay, great. Now you have a sort of a PowerPoint or slideshow that you have put together, and
Yes.
I understand this includes some of the new information that you are breaking here.
Yeah, that's right. I hate PowerPoint, so this is Google Slides. But
okay, great. Yeah, I hate them all. I suck at this stuff.
I don't know. PowerPoint is an abomination. But
that's Microsoft. What do you expect?
I know, right? So as I say, this is kind of a funny time for you to reach out to me. I'm giving a presentation. My friend Toby Martinez invited me to do a talk at the Roswell UFO Festival next weekend, and so I'd been working on a slide deck for that and talking to the people who I'm working with to gather some information for that when this opportunity came up. So I feel it's a funny time. I'm slightly underprepared. So what I'm going to give you is like a preliminary version of something that will eventually be the sequel to the video that I did before, with a lot more graphics and animations and things like that. So today we're going to do the real-time version, the real-time half-ass version of what will eventually be hopefully a more a broader and deeper video. But yeah, if you want to switch over to the screen, I'll do the
sure.
I'll chatter at you for a few minutes.
Yeah, and I was going to say, don't worry about the half-ass thing, because half the time when I'm prepping for this show, and by the time I make it on the air, I feel like I've half-assed it half the time because stuff doesn't work. So you're in good company. This is not network television, that's for sure. So okay, here we go. So
I love it.
All right.
All right, you can see my little slides here?
I can, yes.
Neat. All right, so I'm going to call this thing the unfathomable strangeness of the Nazca Mummies, this little subtitle following the evidence when things get weird. As I say, this will be a sequel to the video that I did before, which was called Thinking Critically and Open-Mindedly about the Nazca Mummies. I'm going to come to a different conclusion here than I did in that video based on some of the evidence that has come to light. And interestingly, I think the conclusion that I am now leaning towards is unlikely to make anybody happy. It's too weird to make the skeptics feel happy, and it's too normal to make the paranormal folk feel happy. So maybe that's an indicator of truth, or we'll see.
I'm sure McWest. I'm sure McWest is watching. So.
Oh, hi, Mick. I hope you're doing well, and I hope that you are having, you and your loved ones are flourishing. Okay, so I'm going to ask that you just spot me three things. So I don't want to redo everything that I did in the previous video, but I understand not everybody has seen that video. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to spot me is that these are real physical objects. So I'm going to show you imaging, 3D reconstruction imaging today. And I'm just going to have to ask you to trust me for the time being, that I'm not just like 3D rendering these things in Maya or something, that these are actually, there are real physical objects, and that they have been scanned, and that the scans are from real machines operated by qualified technicians in a, properly medical or research kind of a context. I can give you reasons for thinking this. I talk about it a little bit in the other video, but for now, I'm just going to ask you to spot me that.
Sure.
The other thing is that I have some anonymous experts that I'm going to appeal to. Naturally and understandably, people keep asking me like, well, who are you? You're a philosophy professor. You're not a scientist. You don't have the credentials to look at these things. And I don't claim to be a scientist. So I am claiming to have some scientific stuff today because of the people that I'm working with. And as you noted earlier, many of the people who are looking at these things are asking to be kept anonymous for the time being. And so I just need people to trust me that if they knew who these people were and the institutions that they work at and the roles that they play, it would be very clear that their expertise is relevant.
Sure.
Okay, so there's a lot of objects. I classify them according to similarity to certain paradigm cases. So one of the ones is called Maria. This is the one that the University of Ica crew just published a paper about. I think that was actually what your interview last week was focused around, was Maria. There's other ones. Montserrat, she was pregnant when she passed. Earl is very strange because he has double bones in his, I believe it's his right upper arm. So I call all of those M types because they're like Maria. J types are like Josefina. These are the little guys that, this is not life size, but this is like the kind that was presented at the Mexico hearing. So Josefina was the first one of those studied. So anything that's like Josefina, I'll call it J type. And then there's another type called Suye, S types. These are little, and they littler than the J types are, and they look kind of like insects. I'll show you some images in a minute. All the names that are on the screen are the names that have been given to the beings for which I have CT scan data that I can show here. We can go through it as much as we want to today. If people have questions, I can jump back and forth between different bodies, and I can do some compare and contrasts and show you all the kind of stuff you want to see.
That's fantastic.
There are some bodies. Well, there are these hands, very strange hands. I'll show you a photo here in a moment. They're about this big. All of these beings are tridactyl. That is, they have 3 fingers in the hands and 3 toes on the feet. All of the ones that I've just talked about have that feature. And then there are various other ones. And as you say, some of them seem to be very roughly made, let's say. And people have concluded in some cases that, well, people will ignore what people have concluded about them. There's a bunch of other ones. Just to give you a quick indication of what other kinds of things there are that I'm not really going to be talking about today because I do not have scan data on them. The image on the left side of the screen is one of these large hands. That is, there have been samples and some DNA out of these that have been taken. You can see how, I mean, obviously you can see how it looks like something alien. And that actually, like, reptile looking texture on it is not only skin, but there's like a metal disc underneath there.
Wow. Okay.
There's also what appear to be tendons coming out of the bottom. And I've talked to one of the people who took samples off of one of these things, and he indicated that these tendons do seem to run through, or these what appear to be tendons, seem to run through a lot of the hand, because where he was cutting, he was running into that, trying to get a sample. The one on the right this is the only photo that I've seen of this one. And I think I'm just going to use this as an example case. We know that this has been sold to a private collector in the south part of Peru. And to my knowledge, or anybody else's that I've spoken to, there are no scans of this at all. So it's not even been x-rayed. So that kind of gives you a little bit of the scope of the things that we don't really have, that I don't have, my team doesn't really have good data on. Now, so I'm going to go ahead.
I was going to say, just for our viewers, explain, if you wouldn't mind, why these things look like they're made out of plaster Paris. What is giving that appearance?
Yeah, good. So they are covered with what's called diatomaceous earth. The claim made by the person who found them is that they were buried in this white powder. Now, this is, very compatible with the geology of the local area. So there are caves that are filled with this white powder, and it's a natural desiccant. So if you took a body and put it in there, then as it decayed, all of the liquids would get absorbed into that. It's made of like very little tiny bits of basically like seashells, little diatoms. That's why it's called diatomaceous earth. Okay. So, I mean, we know there's diatomaceous earth involved, right? Now, look at that one on the right. Is that a ground up construction using plaster Paris? Maybe. I have nothing on that except that one photograph, right? So this is one of the things you have to get used to when you're trying to understand what's going on with these mummies and the things around them, is some of them look very puzzling and perhaps just clearly fake. And some of them look very puzzling, but strikingly real. And so I'm not here to endorse anything about that thing on the right. I know nothing about that thing on the right other than that one photo, right? I know a little bit more about the one on the left. But
Okay.
what I want to talk about today and focus all of our attention on is these three types. So what I'm calling M types, J types, and S types. So the one on the left is Maria, the one on the center is Josefina, and the one on the right is Suye. These are pseudo to scale. I didn't get out the measurement and make sure they're all right, but that's roughly how they are sized to each other. There's a growing team of people who are looking at this. I'm going to call them my team, but that does not mean that I am the leader of that team or I have organized that team. This is just a group of people who are, most of them got involved independently. They're curious. They talked to various people like Gonzalo, who connect everybody together. Just there's a bunch of people out there who are excited and kind of creating social networks, getting people talking to each other. Will Gallison, people like that who are collecting people and getting them thinking about things. I'm playing a similar kind of a role. So I'm going to call it my team, but I don't want it to act like I'm in charge of that team. I'm going to give you some credentials of the people that I'm talking to so you know when I say my experts or my team, the kind of thing that I'm dealing with. The one name I will drop is Elena Hardy. She's a good friend of mine. I met her through this whole thing. She does data science. She's not a PhD. She's, a kind of hobbyist turned obsessed with this stuff. But she's been working with various people on the DNA thing. Some of those people are PhDs. So I have great respect for the work that Elena is doing. A friend of a friend is a gynecological oncologist. I sat down with him and showed him these scans that I'm about to show you. Reconstructive surgeon, X-ray technician, actually a couple of paleontologists, veterinarian, an anthropologist, proteologist. This is a person who studies proteins. And then there's me. So I actually do want to stand up for my role here. I know that people correctly are concerned about my lack of scientific expertise. But one of the things that has become really clear in thinking through this case is that there's an overspecialization problem, that people have a very narrow scope of what their field of expertise is. And a problem like this requires skill from a whole variety of different fields. So in addition to the kind of critical thinking, communication kind of stuff that I'm doing, I'm a generalist of sorts, shallow but broad, and kind of serving as a glue sometimes. Okay. So as I say, I'm going to share some things today that haven't been shared publicly before. And some of these are going to disprove some hypotheses that are defended by people who I care about at this point. I consider a lot of the people in the Nazca world friends of mine. And some of the things we're going to say here today are, in my view, conclusively disprove certain views of interpretations of some of these bodies. But I do want to say that it's my sincere belief that everyone closely involved in pushing this case forward is a genuine, open-minded seeker of truth. You started out talking about Jaime Maussan. Jaime might be wrong about things. Jaime might be overly credulous and kind of excitable, but I do not think Jaime is a hoaxer. I don't think he's deceiving anybody. I think he's an open-minded seeker of the truth. If he's critiqued, he should be critiqued for being maybe a little too open-minded. But I don't think he's being dishonest. I think he's a good actor. There is one possible person who might not be, which is Mario. The person who found them. Now, personally, I'm inclined to think that Mario was telling the truth when he says that he found these and he just hasn't revealed their location because he might get in trouble. But he's clearly not just an open-minded seeker of the truth. He's selling these things apparently to the highest bidder with not a lot of discrimination and looks like illegally across borders and things like that. So
that's not good.
It's not ideal. And it is part of the problem that we're dealing with. And I just want to say, regardless of what final conclusion we come to, the weirdness of this case has made it extremely tempting to jump into conclusions on all sides, right? So people are wrong. Obviously, people are wrong because people are saying different things and incompatible things. So anyways, I just want to say that, and there's a couple more things I'll say about that before I get into the details. So here's a general principle that I at least wanted to talk about quickly, that responsible science faces challenges when it discovers something exciting. Like even right now, if I were trying to be an entirely responsible scientist who was waiting until all the data was in, I wouldn't be talking about stuff today, right? We're kind of midway through an analysis. But, sort of like when we potentially discover, like we discovered on these, the James Webb has discovered these interesting chemicals in exoplanet atmospheres, and maybe that looks like an indicator of life. And there is a real reason to try to say things early when we're seeing something exciting, and I think that's kind of what happened here. Sometimes people have said things that seem exciting, even though that the analysis is not really in yet. And I think we're still very much in the middle of trying to understand what's going on. I have just 2 quick slides here about Jacques Vallée. This is a talk he gave at Soul Foundation. Whoops, actually just one. I thought there was another one. But this is a little chart he did about the tendency for people to report UAP incidents. And it's based on a strangeness metric. I won't go through all the details. Everybody should go watch Jacques' video. But what he notes here is that there's a degree of strangeness that happens in UAP encounters that gets so weird that nobody wants to talk about them. Yeah. And I feel like we are safely in high level weird of whatever is going on with these Nazca mummies. And, I'm going to be here and I'm going to try to say some stuff. But I just want everybody to be aware that in my view, there are no non-weird conclusions on the table. We're dealing with something very, very strange. I'm going to take a moment, if you will allow me, which you have to, because I'm your guest.
That's right. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to just read this statement, translated into English, but that was made by the faculty from the University of Ica back in November, about their analysis. So Thierry Jamine worked with, actually, I don't know how he pulled it off, but managed to get at least 4 of these bodies to be on display, available for study at the University of Ica, or the Universidad Nacional San Luis Gonzaga in Ica, Peru. This came out in November, and when it came out, the UFO critics attacked. And I think it's a really good illustration of some big problems, honestly, about the UAP culture in general, but especially about the UAP culture as it relates to Latin America. So there was an attack that was basically made that said, we shouldn't pay any attention to this report because this is not a real university, right? Like they're not even accredited or whatever. And apparently there is some. I'm not going to name any names because I actually don't know any names.
Yeah, sure.
But even if I did know names, I wouldn't name them. Hi, McWest. I hope you're doing well. I just want to show. I want to read this because I want to show you that how responsible this text is, right? And I want to wag my finger at those who are attacking the academics who are doing their best to bring higher education to poor communities in Peru. Screw you. And these are good people who are doing good work. And if you'd like them to have better resources, then let's work on a more just global system to make sure that they have the resources they need to have equal quality educational resources in Peru. All right, here we go. Let's read this just verbatim. The National University San Luis Gonzaga, Ica, Peru, through its research team, wishes to address the scientific community at the national and international level, as well as the authorities and the general public, to inform about our study work in relation to the dried tridactyl bodies with both human and reptilian characteristics, which have been known in the media as the Nazca mummies. These mummies were discovered in the provinces of Palpa and Nazca in the department of Ica, Peru. It's a rough translation. Sorry, this is a Reddit translation. As time has passed, this finding has gained notoriety in the media, generating controversy and debate. In this sense, we wish to clarify and communicate the following. On August 1, 2019, the university in Ica received 4 desiccated bodies with both human and reptilian characteristics. These specimens were delivered by journalist Jorge Israel Mantilla Carvajal, generally known as Joyce Mantilla, by virtue of his right to confidentiality and in compliance with the principle of confidentiality of the source of the information, blah, 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 blah. Delivery of bodies was carried out for the purpose of their custody, conservation, and investigations. The largest body, which we'll call Maria, this is the archetype for what I'm calling the M-types, which we call Maria, has a size similar to that of a human with a notable anatomical differences, among which an elongated skull and the presence of 3 fingers on both hands and feet stand out. The osteological and imaging analysis of the extremities shows structural harmony and congruence without evidence of phalangeal mutilation, and rather, except in the case of the smallest body, which we call Wawita, this is the different one we won't really talk about today, but she does look clearly mutilated, whereas Maria does not look mutilated. Perhaps she is, but she sure doesn't look that way. The smaller bodies, which are approximately 60 centimeters in length, these are the ones that I'm calling J-types, exhibit a morphological and anatomical structure that differs significantly from the human one. The skin has morphological and histological characteristics that resemble those of reptiles, and the hands and feet are tridactyl. Blah, blah, blah. It's important to note that no rigid or metallic joining or supporting elements have been found in the entire body. Due to the uniqueness of these bodies and the marked anatomical and structural differences, more extensive research is required to better understand its nature. There's like, I think 3 more of these. Sorry, but I'm not sorry.
Take your time. This is good.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Metallurgical analysis carried out by scanning electron microscopy of a metallic pectoral implant, it revealed an important finding. It was determined that the implant is composed of an alloy of several metals, with osmium being the predominant element. It is relevant to note that osmium is an element that was officially discovered in 1803. Due to its electrical properties, osmium is used in the manufacture of some electronic devices and in the production of sensors. Additionally, the microscopic study through optical metallography has revealed the existence of a matrix of microstructures with microporocytes and microinclusions in the implant.
Wow.
However, despite the advances that point toward the confirmation that these bodies are real biological bodies and the presence of osmium in a metal implant, it's evident that more extensive studies are needed due to the marked morphological and structural differences that have been detected through comparative anatomy. Therefore, it's important to highlight that these preliminary results are not conclusive. During the period of custody and conservation of the dried body, our research team, mostly composed of medical specialists, has faced multiple obstacles and difficulties in the proper execution and completion of these investigations. These challenges include the pandemic, budget limitations, lack of institutional support, lack of necessary logistics, equipment, and technology, as well as legal interference by entities such as the Ministry of Culture and the Public Ministry, among others. Despite these obstacles, we managed to carry out imaging studies based on radiographs and tomography using resources provided by the researchers themselves, and metallurgical studies with the support of the National University of Engineering. It's important to highlight that at no time has the research team stated that these bodies belong to extraterrestrial beings. In the course of our investigation, the most we can affirm from a scientific perspective is that they are biological bodies of unknown origin which existed in times past, but not human. Our approach is based on rigorous study and the search for answers within the realm of science without making speculative statements about the nature of the bodies. Last slide. It's important to emphasize that from the beginning, no member of the research has been motivated by media, political, economic, or commercial interests, or any other kind. Our sole intention has been to carry out scientific investigations in order to rigorously determine whether the dried bodies of humanoid appearance are authentic or falsified, whether they have biological origin or not, and to reveal the mysteries surrounding their authenticity. Our commitment has been to the advancement of scientific knowledge and the search for objective answers about these specimens. Finally, as a result of our investigations, the research team has come to the conclusion that the desiccated bodies studied are completely authentic from a biological point of view and show no signs of having been manipulated or constructed in any way. Our scientific approach has been rigorous, and the results contribute to the authenticity of these bodies. Ikaperu, November 1. Okay, so that's a very responsible document.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Like over and over again, they are saying, these are preliminary findings. We need more research. We're not saying they're aliens. We do say they're real biological things. They're not human. We do suspect at the end, they're kind of this tentative conclusion that they are completely authentic from a biological point of view. This is their view at the time of publication. But I just want to make sure that that is known, right? That this has been handled by, especially the team at University of Ica, with great care and responsibility. And if they're wrong, then they're wrong. But they're not hoaxers, and they're not grifters, and they're not all the things that people keep saying in talking about these mummies. People, if they're wrong, are wrong, sincerely wrong, because these things are damn confusing. Okay. Anyways, so fair enough?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. All right. So I'm going to talk about these three types, M types, J types, S types. We have some possible explanatory options. They could be naturally occurring things, or they could be constructs. If they're naturally occurring, they could be naturally occurring from Earth, right? This could be, some people have suggested, these are like shadow biosphere beings or cryptoterrestrials or whatever they are. Some kind of a branch, some kind of a, humanoid dinosaur or something like that, right? That's a hypothesis. They could be alien. Of course, we know that there are other planets. We know, all things considered, they're not that far away. We know that it's possible to traverse long distances given the amount of time that there's been. See Fermi's paradox. Maybe they're aliens. Or maybe they're constructs. That is, maybe they're built and not naturally occurring. If they're constructs, then they're either modern or they're ancient. Now, what has basically happened is everybody that has looked at the weirdness of these things has jumped to, or moved toward one of two conclusions: that they're natural, and because of how weird they are, therefore that they're alien, or that they're constructs, and because they look like aliens, they must be modern. Those are kind of the two. If you see people fighting with each other, it's either people who believe they're aliens or people who believe that they're modern constructs by Mario and friends to make money. And of course, they look like E.T., and of course, they look like the beings at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And of course, they look like the hybrids and reptilians and insectoids that people in the abductee literature talk about, because they were custom built by Mario to fit that narrative so that he could sell them, right?
Yeah. That's what I call that's what I refer to as debunker magical thinking. These debunkers, they're he's Mick West and these other morons. They claim to be coming from a place of science and reason, but the fact of the matter is they're coming from a place of total BS, or what I like to say in a much nicer way as magical thinking, meaning they're just completely disconnected from reality. But anyway, sorry, I digress.
No, it's not a digression. It's actually right on target, right? Because the debunkers seem to be willing to grant to Mario any resources and capacities imaginable, right? But like, Mario is a real guy. He lives in Pulpa, Peru, which is a little town in Peru. He does not have access to state-of-the-art whatever. He's a grave robber, right? That's what he does. I'm sure he does other things too. I'm sure he's a whole human being with a story. I have not met Mario yet. I would love to meet Mario. But yeah, notice that the debunkers are just willing to just throw any hypothetical resources into Mario's toolkit to explain what these things are. That's actually extremely important for what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
Because I am now moving personally toward the conclusion that they are constructs, although I'm not sure. There are things about them that are still very alien, and they're very weird, and I don't know. But I'm leaning towards construct, but ancient construct, which might actually be the weirdest option of all. So if we're going to say that they're ancient constructs, I want to draw a further distinction between inanimate ancient constructs and potentially living ones. So in an inanimate ancient construct, this would be, something like a ritual doll that was made for presumably religious, cultural kinds of reasons. Whereas a living construct would be something like a biological robot. People talk about this stuff in the UFO literature when they try to explain what the small grays are. There's reasons to think that they're not ordinarily evolved beings, but they were built. There's some kind of like biological AI people talk about sometimes, right? Maybe it's something like that. Okay, so those are the options as I see them, and now I'm going to start giving you some information that will help discriminate between some of these options. Although I will warn you ahead of time, it will not solve the options. We're still going to be very puzzled at the end, and I still think at the end of the day, all of the hypotheses are ultimately, all the hypotheses are still alive.
Sure.
But here's some helpful information and to some extent retractions, because I promised at the end of my previous video that if anybody proved me wrong about something, that I would state it publicly. So I've been proven wrong about some things, and I need to state them publicly.
Hot man.
So I know, right? Okay, so some of the bodies are at least partially constructs. This is the thing that's going to make some people upset, and I'm going to spend some time making sure that I make it very clear why I believe this at this point. So the J-type skulls, that is the skulls of the ones that look like Josephina, are modified llama skulls. This is a hypothesis that's been floating around for a while. And it's been fought about, and various similarities and dissimilarities have been discussed in the community who are talking about these things. I now believe that we can conclusively say that they are modified llama skulls. They have been ground or cut, and we actually do have protein analysis now where there are at least a dozen or more llama-specific proteins that are found in these skulls. So I'll make more on this soon, but they are llama skulls. Some of the skin, a claim has been made that the skin is continuous. And it does seem that some of the skin, at least, seems to be not a sheet of skin. Some of it is a sheet of skin. So, from what we can tell, at least on some of them, the sheet on the back is a sheet of skin. But one of the things I puzzled about in my video is how you would make skin and then wrap it around every finger and joint and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And at least some parts of the bodies seem to be covered in a hard substance that seems like a resin. That we have some very, very, very preliminary data indicating that it might have been a slurry of some kind of clay and various animal parts like hair and skin that might have been boiled together or something like that. There is real reptile skin on them, but it looks like they might not be entirely covered with reptile skin. They might also be covered with this kind of resin. And there is some fiber inside of the toe bones. I'll show these in a moment. So this has convinced me minimally that the J-type skulls are modified llama skulls. And there are these other evidences that seem to support some kind of construction hypothesis. That being said, they seem to be ancient. And one of the strongest reasons for this is but medical people or science tech people ran some samples through a mass spec and various other kinds of things. And they're not finding any modern polymers. So there's no glues in here, no modern glues. If it's been glued entirely using substances that you could have produced in ancient Nazca Peru, not in modern times. There are some unexpected modifications. I'll show some pictures of this in a moment. But there's one particular modification that's made to the llama skulls that would be really, really weird if it were done now, but not weird if it were done in ancient times. And another very important reason is, I'll show this, it'll be clearer when I show some more data, when I show you the scans. These things are coherent in a very surprising way. And so if you built them, you would have to build them out of bodies. We've radiocarbon dated these things at 1,000 to 2,000 years old. So you'd kind of have to make them out of mummies, and working with mummies now is really hard to do. They're extremely fragile. The person that I've been talking to who took samples off was talking about the difficulty of even taking any samples off the bones, because just using tweezers, the bones that he was working with would just crumble. Wow. So the modern construction hypothesis, I like your magical thinking point, right? Like, it just assumes that you could take a human mummy and a llama mummy or another llama part and chop them up and slice them and dice them and glue them together in some way without them just like, it would be a nightmare to try to build these things out of mummies. Okay. So those are the three reasons I want to talk about why they seem to be ancient. And this just makes everything more confusing. Right? This is why I said at the beginning, this is going to make nobody happy, right? Because why would the Nazca make things that look like our modern conceptions of an alien? If these were made 1,000 years ago by the indigenous people of Peru, then why do they look like ET? And why do they look like the beings at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind? Why do we have things that look reptilian and insectoid? And like, why did they do that 1,000 years ago? This is so weird. This is why everybody who assumes that they're constructed assumes that they're constructed now.
Maybe Mario smuggled one of these bodies into Steven Spielberg's mansion when he was making Close Encounters.
You know, one of these days I'd love to sit down with Steven Spielberg and ask him how. Anyways, Steven's a sharp guy, and of course he did his research quite a lot on those movies by talking to people in the community. Anyways, another interesting and fascinating thing is if these are ancient constructs in Peru, why are we seeing similar tridactyl art that appears to exist all over the world? I drew attention particularly to these Dogu statues in Japan in my previous video, where if you hold them right next to each other, it is just shocking how similar they look to each other.
Right.
And of course, you know, they're separated by the Pacific Ocean. Right. So
that's
a big deal. Yeah. Okay. So let me show you a couple of photographs of things, and then I will get into the CT, and then we can just chat. So this thing on the left is a J-type skull that has been cut open. The top has been removed. This is what the samples were taken out of that are being given a protein analysis that are showing us that the bone is llama bone. I will show you exactly how to build one of these things out of a llama skull here in the CT scan in just a moment. But there's a couple things I want to draw your attention to. One is, can you see my mouse cursor when I do this?
Negative.
All right. On the left-hand side of that, I should have little floating arrows or something. There are two panels. There's a little ridge that runs up the back. And then to each side of that, if you cut a llama skull, which I'll show you how to do this, you'll get two big holes in the back. They've been filled. They've been filled by two pieces of bone that are cut so precisely that it doesn't show up on a CT scan.
Wow.
If you look on the east, I'll show you. You can see them. It's hard. Just let's say it doesn't show up on a CT scan. Let's say hard to see on a CT scan, which is why so many qualified people have looked at these things and puzzled about what they are. They're extremely puzzling. But you can also see there's this like dark, there's basically some kind of a paste or a glue or a resin or something there. But again, no modern polymers. So this, whatever adhesive there is ancient. And the other thing I want to draw your attention to is that hole at the bottom, which, as you can see, is kind of a weird, oblong, not entirely regular square shape. And I just want you to imagine, makers of the world unite. If you were going to make in modern times, if Mario were going to make an alien skull out of a llama skull, and he needed to drill a hole in the bottom of it. Oops, I just cheated. He needed to put a hole in the bottom of it in order to shove a spinal cord up into it. What would be the right tool, the obvious tool, the cheap and straightforward tool for that job? It would be a drill bit.
Right.
And a drill bit would make a circular hole.
Yeah.
So is that a sign of modification? People have pointed at this before and said that it's a sign of modification. I agree it's a sign of modification, but it would be really weird if it were modern modification and it were a square hole. Like, all you got to do is get a drill and put a $2 bit in it and go zzz, and then you've got a hole.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
It makes no sense to do this
Magical thinking
in modern times. Magical thinking. And on the right, we have a Nazca skull. We know that the Nazca did brain surgery. We know that the Nazca did brain surgery. We know that because we have their tools and we have their skulls. So here's a skull with a square hole cut in it by the Nazca. Would the Nazca be the kind of people who might take body parts and put them together into something for some reason? Yeah. Among other things, they turned the skulls of their foes into trophies. They were very bodily people, and they did body modding, body adapting, body decorating kinds of things. You can see the hair, which looks like it's made of rope or something. I don't know. Maybe that's actually the hair and dried out. I don't know. I'm not an anthropologist or an archaeologist. I need more help. This is new stuff. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Go back.
Yeah, please.
The who's the guy that the Jason Colavito, the one on the right, that looks like the debunker writer, UAP writer that has a huge crush on Garry Nolan. Yeah, that could totally be Jason Colavito on the right.
Don't we all kind of have a crush on Garry Nolan?
Yeah, I definitely have a man crush on Garry Nolan. I always say when I grow up I want to be Garry Nolan. Sorry, go ahead.
I do want to know what Garry is doing with all those samples that people have given him, and he hasn't released public information about them. Hey, Garry, we're going to talk soon, and I'm curious what you're doing with them. All right. This is the bone that I mentioned earlier. He was trying to get the person who I was speaking to, who's gathering samples, was trying to get some bone samples out of it, and it just crumbled when he was trying to get it out of it. So again, bones are tremendously fragile. But some more evidence of construction here. You can see that there's a kind of fibrous material inside of, these are the toe bones of a J-type, and then some kind of a resiny kind of plug glue. Why do these look like finger cartilage? Because they're made of finger cartilage, basically. They're made of like boiled up body parts of animals, and then there seems to be some kind of natural fiber running in there. This at least is the hypothesis that I'm going with. Of course, it's also possible that this is some kind of bizarre alien biology and we don't understand it yet. We do not have yet even microscopy on those fibers. The person that I'm talking to is a very serious scientist with very serious equipment and approval from his lab to be doing research on these bodies. But he also has other responsibilities, and we don't have all the data we want yet. But we're hoping to get more data over the next couple of weeks. I'm hoping to get more data by next weekend when I have to give my talk. But we'll see how that goes. And with that, I'm done showing you things, and I'm willing to shut up and get into CT scans, or we could chat for a bit. What do you want to do next?
You do your thing.
I'm going to do my thing.
Do your thing.
You can see Josefina.
Yes, I can.
Oh, there she is. All right, this is Josefina, the archetype of the M-types. So if you're not familiar with what DICOM files are, let me just quickly show you what DICOM files are. So DICOM files are grayscale images that are produced by, I believe it's just X-rays, right? That cut basically slices through the body. So what you get is a bunch of slices. And then you can put that into software. Like here I am using Osirix, which is my preferred software. And it'll generate a 3D construct. So one of the reasons why I think people have not been able to figure out why, how to build such a thing, one of the reasons is because they are using the slices. That's the kind of more normal thing to do in the medical world. I've watched medical people sit down with these DICOM files, and what they mostly do is they pull up these 2D slices and they scan through them like this.
Okay.
And some of the features that I want to show here that are important in understanding what these are very difficult to see in the 2D slices. The 3D reconstruction is very, very helpful. Okay, so this is Josefina. I know that not everybody has spent as much time with the Nazca Mummies as I have. So let me give you some introduction to why people have come to the conclusion that Josefina is an alien. That is because of the strangeness of her anatomy. In particular, let me show you. Oh, let me show you also what I'm doing here. You can basically remember the grayscale values in a DICOM file represent density. Right. So you can kind of slide this thingy around and then emphasize different densities. That's what I'm doing here. So if I kind of pull this up, I'm pulling out the lower density materials, and you're now getting to just like, the hardest bones. So you can see that Josefina is very unlike any terrestrial naturally occurring organism, right? Right. For many reasons. One, of course, is that all of us have 2 bones in the bottom of our arms and 2 bones in the bottom of our legs, right? And these guys only have 1. Of course, we have 5-fingered hands. We, the humans, and the other primates have 5-fingered hands. These have 3-fingered hands. Another thing to call attention to is that all of the bony animals on this planet have ball and socket hip joints. Right. And these do not, as you can see. They just kind of float here. So under the assumption that this is a natural being, all of the junction here would have to happen with soft tissues, which I still don't think is a crazy hypothesis. Our arms are actually, the shoulder blades are entirely attached using soft tissues, right? There is a joint here, but in the back, that's all soft tissue. There's all kinds of soft tissue. Soft tissue is cool. And I don't think we can conclude that they're fake because there's not a ball and socket hip. There's also these weird ribs. There's no sternum in the middle. They start on one side and then they continue all the way around to the other side. If you continue pulling out density, you can see that there are these objects here which appear to be eggs, although they are very, very dense. I can show you inside of them. They do have structure inside of them, so they don't seem to be. They do, yeah, and I can show you all that here in a second. These are these implants that people are talking about. I haven't been able to confirm the osmium claim. It's not entirely clear to me yet who even made the osmium claim, but the osmium claim has been getting a lot of airtime for a while now. Okay, so those are the reasons why, in my previous video, I made this argument, right, that if these are genuine coherent remains, then they're alien. They're genuine coherent remains, therefore they're alien. It is very, it's obviously true that if they are genuine coherent remains, they're alien. So at this point, the action is still, are they in fact genuine coherent remains? What do we want to do first? Do we want to look at the llama skull debunk first, or do we want to look, at what's more dramatic? Debunk first, and then why the debunk isn't enough to convince me that they're not aliens, or let's talk.
I like talking about debunkers and magical thinking, so let's go there first. All right,
let's do some debunking. I'm not going to do any magical thinking. I'm gonna show you exactly how to do this.
I knew there was a reason I liked you.
All right, so let's do. I'm going to just pull up. I'm going to get them up here side by side. I'm going to try at least. So I need a 3D viewer, model rendering. All right, there's Josefina. And now I need to do this. And here's my llama skull. Oops, it's on the other screen. Give me just a moment to make sure I can manipulate these things exactly like I want to. Eventually, this will be a shiny video, and there will be no glitchiness. It'll all just work.
This is great. We're getting to view the sausage making behind the scenes. So, yeah, this is great.
Yeah. Well, and maybe this will do something to help people who are like, who is this guy? I'm damn good at Osiris at this point.
Clearly.
Minimally, I can do more with CT scan imaging than, not imaging, but the actual like 3D rendering video stuff than most of my medical colleagues can.
Oh, awesome.
All right, here we go. Here we go. So let's get... llama skull over there and Josefina over there. That wasn't too painful.
Nah, perfect.
Okay, so you can kind of tell right away that there's some similarities here between. Yeah, you can't see my cursor, or you can see my cursor.
I cannot, unfortunately. There may be a setting in
Dang
Zoom.
it.
I'm not sure.
Well, All right. Well, I'll just use my words as pointers. On the left, Josefina's head. Notice how the eyes kind of look similar. Notice, let's do it this way. Look at this llama skull, right?
Right.
If you look at the back of this llama skull, it looks like a face. You could certainly imagine somebody, for whatever reason, hoaxer or religious artifact builder or whatever, who had access to llama skulls, sitting around and thinking, that looks kind of like a face. If you just cut off the front part of the skull and various other parts, then you could get something that looks a lot like a face. So you'll just have to trust me, bro, here, as far as what I'm going to do is just nothing I have done to this is anything other than subtraction. So I just spent hours and hours going through here and going back and forth, cutting parts of it off to try to make it look like Josefina's skull. Interestingly, this is one of those like science being science kind of things, right? Like I was convinced that this was not a llama skull, and I was trying to prove that it wasn't a llama skull, and then it turned out to be a llama skull. So I just had to deal with that. Okay, so here we go. You can see some, even without doing anything more than what I just did. I'm going to show you more that'll make it even clearer in a moment. You can see some striking similarities, right? You can see that the J-types have these little bud things that stick out on the sides of their neck. That is this bone here, which has been ground a little more than I did, but I wanted it to be obvious. There's these little thingies here. You can see that right here. And right here, there are the ear holes of the llama are here. The ear holes of the J-types are in exactly the same place. If you go look at the back of the skull, it's rough here, and you can see that it's rough on the back of the J-type skulls in exactly the same place. If you switch this way and this way, you can see that there's a little like ridge here and here. That's where you do the cutting off on this side. Here and here are these little ridges. In order to make this look like this, there is on the llama skull a ridge here that you would have to grind down, and this is pretty clear. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start messing with the density settings so you can see some of the variant density in both of these skulls, and the variant density is the argument here for why these are definitely llama skulls. All right, so here we go. We're going to turn down the densities here so we can get some nice oops, let's see. Okay, so what this is doing is it's kind of removing things by density. So I'm not saying there's holes here. There aren't holes here. But where you'll start seeing holes in the image, that's because that's a less dense area. So there's a less dense spot right between the eyes that is exactly the same shape as the less dense spot right between the eyes. Where's my less dense spot right between the eyes? There we go. You can see very clearly here how this is this. If you grind it down to make that little ridge go away, then you get that. Let me pull it back up here and pull it back up here and rotate over here. Let's mess with some densities some more. So the side of these skulls have not been modified at all in my my analysis. But you can see just naturally occurring densities in the skull, right? Apparently this part of a llama skull is less dense than the other parts. And if I just keep doing this to Josefina, you can see that the less dense spots are the less dense spots in exactly the same way. One last thing I'll show you, which is if you just keep going, the bones on the inside of the ears are super dense. That's just the way that ear bones are. They're super dense. And sure enough, in exactly the same spot, they are in Josefina. Don't make anything of the color. The color is entirely artificial. It's all just based on the CLUT table. I don't know what CLUT stands for, but it's basically, anyways, you don't need to worry about this. But all the color is artificial. It's just showing differences in density. It's not like it is actually that color. Yeah, so there you go. I'm entirely convinced that Josefina's skull is a llama skull. Now, are we doing okay? Do you want to chat for a bit before I go on?
Yeah. So what is, if obviously we don't know for sure, but like, what are, were they just experimenting? Do you think was there like a llama walking down the village, and they're like, hey, we're going to grab your head and flip it 180 degrees and throw it on a body? Like, what are some possibilities, some hypotheses?
So here's a hypothesis, and then I'm going to break this hypothesis, leaving us at a place where we just go, dear God, I don't know what this thing is, because that's where I am, right? Yeah. Hypothesis. Nazca people were hanging around. They eat llama. So llama was the only domesticated animal, large animal, in actually, I think in all of the Americas, but certainly in Peru. So they had a lot of llamas around, and if you wanted some meat, then I presumably you would slaughter your llamas every once in a while. So they would be pretty familiar with llama skulls. Humans are good at seeing faces in things. This is why people are always seeing faces in the sky and in toast and stuff like that, right?
Right.
I don't know, you want to make a ritual doll of some kind, it would be a great place to make a small little head. You just grind away, chip away at your llama skull until it looks kind of funky. And you do have to do some things to it, which I didn't mention. So it's not all grinding. It can't all be grinding. Whoops. Well, I don't know where you went, Josefina. Let's bring you back again and see if that works better. While I boast, it's because I boasted about my Osiris skills. It's my bad karma.
Did you crash it?
No, I don't think it crashed. Okay. That's the funny part. It's still running. She just disappeared.
There you go.
There she's back.
She's back.
All right, you're back, Josefina. All right. So you can't only subtract. You do have to add. So in particular, I could have shown this too, but well, it's too late. Just, it'll be better in the video. Okay. There is that large hole in the front of the llama skull, which is bigger than the mouth. So there are two bony plates, one here, and one here, which have been added somehow, in order to, show that, make it look like a mouth. And as I said before, there are two bony plates added to the back to fill that hole that I pointed out earlier. But actually, that's pretty much all you have to do. Grind everything down, and then add these two plates and add those two plates in the back, and then you get a J-type skull. A J-type skull. But this is not a skull. This is a whole body. And what I want to do, which now I'm going to puzzle some more with us, right? Like, am I totally convinced this is a ground up construct? I mean, like, as in like the ground up, not like ground up,
right?
Like you stick it in a grinder.
Yeah.
Okay. Am I totally convinced this is a ground up construct? No, I'm not. Because, I can explain to you how someone could build the head. I could tentatively explain to you how you could build the arms and legs. But, oh man, I don't know how you build these torsos. These torsos are wild. I'm trying to get this thingy lined up so I can crop her a little bit. What are you doing here, cursor? Why aren't you doing? Yeah, I told you. It's because I boasted. I'm being punished by the powers that be. No, it's just not going to work. That's weird. Well, I wanted to show you that, though. Why is this not? It's my cursor thingy. My cursors are cursed. Look, when I click on that, it should turn red, and then I should move it. Let me stop the share for a second and try something.
Sure.
Let me see. Let me I'm going to do something dangerous. What happens if I just disconnected from you?
Oh, that's highly dangerous. We don't want to do that. What I would suggest is, what if you quit what if you quit the DICOM viewer and restarted it?
I'm gonna live dangerously. Are you ready to live dangerously?
I'm going to
unplug. I have an external monitor running, and I don't know what's going to happen. I think it'll be fine. Here we go.
Right, we'll try it. Hey, it's a good trouble show. We're used to things breaking on the show. So, yep, there he's go. He's gone. All right, or at least he's. I don't know. Maybe some NHI went into the room and used their powers to warp space and time. Oh, there you go. Wow, yeah, that was quick. All right, great.
That was my mad scientist moment for the day, where I just like yanked the cord on a live broadcast. Okay.
Yeah, I thought I was going to have to sit and vamp for like 15 minutes and talk about Mick West and Jason Colavito and magical thinking, but you saved me from it.
Oh, thank God. All right. So let's see. You're seeing everything okay now, right? We're back to screen sharing?
Yep.
All right. Now I'm going to do it all on one monitor and hope. I have noticed that Osiris freaks a little bit if I have too many monitors open. Now it's
there we go. Now it's working. Great.
It was my mad scientist moment was totally worth it. Okay, so let's see here. What I want to do, I really needed this because this is all the dramatic stuff. Like, yes. I can't let down my pro alien friends by just being a debunker, right? Like, there's reasons to think this thing is still alien in some really weird way. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna cut her sideways so we can peek sideways through her torso, and then we're gonna cut her the other way so we can peek the other way through her torso.
Okay.
So here we go. One thing we should note is that there is something inside this skull that does seem brain-ish. I know that my colleague who got samples from this does have a sample from not Josefina, but from inside of her skull. Whatever this material is, we have a sample of it. It has not yet been analyzed. TBD. Okay. Like and subscribe, kids. But what I want to show in here is just how much apparent biological integration there is in this torso. So this does look like a spinal column. Although it is oddly unlike spinal column in various ways. They are different in different specimens. They all look basically the same internal structure, but they are slightly different, like you would see from different individuals who have decomposed 1,000 years ago. And that's, I could show you, if you'd like, I can show a couple of different J types and how they're very similar. But Josefina's a good one to stick with for now and then. But you can see, right? Like, let's do front back integration, and then we'll do side integration. So this thing is just full of all this connective stuff, right? Like this will be easier if I kind of slice this a little more here. Yeah, that's better. So whatever this column is, like, it's connected to these weird looking ribs in the front. It's also entirely integrated with the back, right? Like, look at how this connects up. So the ribs connect back here. And then there's this, open pocketed structure in here where there's this column. Let me just pull this out a little bit again so I can show you.
Like the first thing I noticed is it seems like the spinal column is that it's going right through the middle of the torso as opposed to like the the back end.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there any animal that would have that?
So this is where, remember our problem earlier of field specificity, right? Like, I've been able to talk so far to one veterinarian, and she was like, hey, you should go talk to a veterinary radiologist. But even if you talk to a veterinary radiologist, most of them have been looking at, cows and sheep and horses and dogs and cats, right? Like, if this is built out of some animal, if this is an animal spinal column, so first of all, it can't just be an animal spinal column, because look how integrated it is with the back. Right. So it has to be an animal spinal column and back. And look how it ties in with this weird collarbone, and look how it ties in with this weird shoulder blade. It'll be easier when I slice this the other direction in a second. But yeah, it's whoops, I don't know what's going on here. Yeah. Before I slice her the other direction, I want to show you a couple more things. Notice here, inside of here, there are these like little threads that run up and down.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
Side of here.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. Those who think these are bodies are doing, interesting work speculating about what the biological function of the various things in here are. I can tell you in one of the other ones I have scans on, and we'll be able to show better when I have more time to make a video. Some of them have eggs here. Oh, you want to see through the eggs? Let's look through the eggs while we're here. Yeah, everybody likes to look at the eggs. Let's look at the eggs. First of all, let's make it clearer that we just got, oh, look at those eggs. Although then we're pulling out, that's probably good enough. Let's do that. Where did my crop box go? Oh dear. This is what happens when you do live DICOM analysis, kids. This is why there's not a lot of live DICOM analysis.
This is a magic. This is a magic of live YouTube live streaming.
Yeah,
we all like
that's right. Yeah. It's like Twitch streaming for nerds. We can all just sit around and look at DICOM files together. All right. Let's see here. Let's rotate that way, and then let's. I think if I do this and slide it down, and oh, look at that. Right. My hubris is being slightly redeemed at this point. All right. Here we go. All right, let's slice through these little suckers. So yeah, you can see, first of all, they're still white. So they're super dense all the way through, right?
Right.
And I don't know what that means. Super dense all the way through, but they are not continued. It's not a rock. The hypothesis that I've heard from debunkers is that they might be fossilized eggs.
Okay.
Because apparently it's a little hard to tell when I do it, but there's other people who are better at this than me, who have kind of shown there is some variance in density around the edges. So it does look kind of like a shell. Maybe somebody, maybe Mario has a bunch of, in addition to whatever these backbone things are, and llama skulls, and the capacity to finally put these bones together in various ways, a bunch of dinosaur bones or dinosaur eggs, or right. I don't know. I'm really not saying a modern hoax is entirely off the table, especially now at this point that I believe that that Josefina's skull is in fact all the J-type skulls are llama skulls. So obviously a hoax hypothesis does have to be back on the table. But I don't want to jump to modern hoax because, man, these things are so weird. Okay. Yeah, you're doing good here. Let's see. Hold on. Let me get this thingy back up here. Because actually, this accidentally did a pretty decent job showing what people suspect about the construction of these ribs. So they appear to be continuously circular ribs, but actually this little view I just accidentally created shows there does seem to be the possibility of a seam here. Where you could take the backbone and cut it, and then cut the other bone like really well, and then fit it to this backbone, and then seal it somehow. But
like the cut isn't something that is like the potential cut isn't something rough like
right.
From 2,000 years ago, they hammered out a chisel and cut it through it. So it's like if these things have indication of being assembled, when I sit and I look at it, it's like how even today would we do that? Let alone 2,000 years ago.
I mean, this was the point I made in my previous video, right? Like, as I'm not like a super high quality maker, but I make little models and nerd stuff, and I 3D print and jazz like that, and like just thinking, I watch a lot of Adam Savage, and like if I imagine what techniques you could use to make these things, it still boggles the mind, right? Like, sure, I could make a Josefina skull. In fact, I planned to make a Josefina skull because I got a deer skull when I was driving to the Grand Canyon off the side of the road, which my family was very excited about. And I'm gonna carve it up and make an alien skull out of it.
Okay.
So I feel pretty confident that I can make an alien skull. But from that, can I conclude that I could build this whole torso?
Right.
Hell no. This whole torso is a piece of work, man. All right, let me show you the front back cuts. And then we got to do that.
Yeah, and the other thing too, it's like you know, the Mick Wests of the world or whatever say that all of these are just like
you really don't pieces. Like Mick West.
No, I don't.
Mick, I'm sure you have your own virtues, and whatever flaws you have are because you didn't get enough hugs. And I hope that you're doing well, Mick. I wish you the best. Okay, I have never met or even listened to Mick, but I do understand people.
You're not missing much.
Apparently not. Okay, let's get back out here. I hope this is remotely entertaining for your viewers watching the hack.com files.
I know what I was going to say prior to getting distracted by.
Wait, is this a podcast? Is everyone going to not be able to see this? This is the worst audio podcast ever.
Yeah, you know what? You know what I'm going to do? I'll post this as a podcast, and all I'll say is, "Hey, podcast." Hey, podcast viewers or listeners, go to YouTube. Blah 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 blah. That's it's gonna be the world's shortest. It's gonna be the world's shortest podcast. It's gonna be 30 seconds long, where I just tell people to go tune into YouTube.
Oh gosh! All right, let's quickly jump from the top here. This is actually the easier way to do. I'll show you the top in a second, top down in a second, because it's actually is easier to do that in the 2D view than it is in the 3D view. All right, let me show you the front back slice, and then we can do the other thing, and then we can do whatever else you want to do. All right, do that, and then we're gonna do this. Actually, let's pull this forward a little bit. Okay, so I've already emphasized the kind of front back integration, which is why people are puzzled about that. That was really what had me on Team Alien until the llama skull thing happened, and now I just don't know what to think. Okay. But look at the side to side integration. Right now, you can nice and clearly see the shoulder blades in the back. And how it ties into this thing. Look, I'm not a veterinarian. I've actually only been able to talk to one veterinarian. Maybe there's some nice zoologists out there who can be like, actually, that's a whatever monkey. And then, if you took a whatever monkey and then you chopped it like this and then you glued the ribs together, then you could make things. That's, of course, a possibility that we haven't yet explored. More information is needed. I mean, if I have a punchline here, it's that these things are worth studying, right?
Yeah.
Because the thing that everybody, it's why I spent the time reading that thing at the beginning, right? Like, what are the University of Ica people saying? This is worth more study. We don't know what it is, but it's worth more study.
Sure.
It's not a modern construct. If this is an archaeological finding, it's like the coolest and weirdest archaeological finding since like the mummies in Egypt, right? Like,
of course.
Why and how did the Nazca or whoever build these things in the ancient world? Is it a modern hoax? Maybe. Have we ruled that out? No. Is there good reason to think that it's not a modern hoax? Yeah. Should we do more work? Yeah. If it's a modern hoax, then we should get to the bottom of it. Let's keep looking. Let's keep getting more data. But in my video, another thing I have to retract, right, is I was like, hey, people keep saying, we need more data to come to a conclusion. And I was like, no, we don't. We have plenty of data. Yeah, okay, I was wrong. Like, now we need more data. I'm firmly convinced we need more data to know what the heck these things are, because they're incredibly weird. All right. You see the side-to-side integration? I do. Look at how much that looks like a living thing. All right. Yeah. And then let's quickly I'm going to jump over here because is this going to be easy enough to do? All right. So you can see the little red box that shows up there where you can see
the plane,
the kind of line the plane that we're going through.
Right.
All right. So we're in the middle of her skull. There's those super dense ear bones. That's that bright white spot there. If you get to the top vertebrae, this was pointed out to me by the X-ray tech that I was talking with. It looks like it doesn't have a hole in it, right? So if you go down further, it's clearer, right? You got this nice column that runs down. I don't know how to show this to you without a cursor.
That's okay.
Anyways, the top vertebrae look like they're solid, which would be sort of like like a cervical vertebrae, like at the bottom, right? They are of a human, they're solid. I was playing around with the idea for a while that maybe you could build a J-type by taking a human spinal cord and turning it upside down, because it is true at the bottom of the spinal cord, it bends forward in a little way that's like this. I could actually show you because we have, I have Maria and Montserrat and Earl. So those are almost entirely human, at least. So anyways, I don't know. But you can't just turn the thing upside down, because then these little ridges on the back would point the wrong direction. So if this is a biological construct made entirely of Earth beings, I don't know how to build the torso. I know how to build the head and the arms and the fingers and the toes and the hands, but I don't know how to build the torso. So I don't know what the heck these things are.
Well, and the main thing here is, like, I think it'd be like one thing if these were just bones and that was it, and they're connected by whatever joint, ball and socket or whatever. But when you look at all of this connective tissue, all of the soft tissue, the supportive ligaments, things of that nature, it's like, how, even now, like, how would you make that and keep intact all of that soft tissue and all of the connective bodies? I don't know how you would do that, let alone do it 2,000 years ago.
You'd have to create it out of whatever this slush is, whatever that little plug was in the end of the bone. You'd have to shape it somehow, right? And yeah, so I'm really not willing to say at this point impossible. What I am willing to say is hell of a lot of work, and for reasons unknown, done only so far, no evidence of modern tools required, right? Other than the precision of the cuts. The precision of the cuts is of course extremely modern, and the fact that it looks like an alien is extremely modern, right? But the materials involved seem to be ancient, or available to the ancients. And we need a lot more data on this. We have some samples. We need more samples. Remember the punchline of today's episode, kids? We need more science on these things.
More science, less magical thinking. So so let's talk about the implant, that barbell-shaped implant. I know when I was talking to Garry Nolan, he thought that perhaps it was some kind of radiator. Now, I think you had mentioned earlier that that this material, did you say it was layered, or what was its metallurgical makeup?
That, but that was in the report that I read. I could read you that part again in a minute. But I want to go against the radiator hypothesis by showing you. Let's see. Does Alberto? Yeah, Alberto has one. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull up some that have Alberto, and let's do. Wait, who was I going to do? Artemis. Let's do Artemis. All right, let's do that. 2D viewer, and then this is a really crazy thing for me to try to do live.
Live on the edge.
Hey, viewers. Welcome to the part where Steve tries to organize multiple 3D view windows in Osirix without crashing his computer or boring you. All right, let's see. I need to get that up, and then I need to get, actually that's fine, because that's what I want to show you about that. Anyways, let's do that. And then I need Artemis. Artemis, where'd you go? Oh, damn. Wait, if I do this, Artemis, and then if I do this, 3D Artemis.
Next time I have you on, I'm gonna have some music, soft music to play, play underneath.
That's a good idea. Boom, boom, boom. All right, you can see all of them at the same time. Now I just have to zoom out and pan up and rotate, and look at this. All right, now wait, I forgot that. There we go. Do that, and then do this, and then let's make this look more like the other ones. One of these things is not like the others. All right, there we go. You can see all three of these little characters now?
Yes.
With a modest amount of movie magic, that would be smooth. Okay, there's not going to be a straightforward structural explanation to give for the implants, because they are all over the place, specimen to specimen.
Are they the same shape, or are the implants different as well?
different shapes, different locations. So I'll show you across these 3 specimens, right? So Josefina has this barbell shape on her chest. Alberto has this little, the way you can see these is if you crank up the, or turn way down the density, it actually starts pulling the x-rays that are bouncing off of the plate in the air. It looks really cool.
Okay.
So you can tell where the metal is because it flares like that when it, when you get the sensitivity set too high, right? That now it's starting to show the air.
Okay.
Right? So if we go just below that, you can see where the metal is because you get these little flare patterns coming out of there, right?
And
so there's metal in her chest.
And I understand we had Dr. Richard O'Connor on last week, and one of the things he was saying was that at least in the barbell that sits on Josefina, that it looked like that the metal sort of melded with the soft tissue, the skin, the muscle, and then also melded into the bone, which is something he was saying medically we have no way of doing that.
Yeah, let me show. I can show you why he said that in a second here. So right, so you can see we have an implant here. We have an implant here. The reason I pulled up Artemis is because Artemis has a ton of them, right? Like 3 on here, although not at the same point that not at the same point that Josefina does. 1 or 2 on the chest, 1 on the top of the head. There's various other ones, including among the M types and the S types. Some of them also have implants, but they're all over the place. How many plates they have and where the plates are is different specimen to specimen. There is one other one, I think, that has a plate that looks kind of like the one on Josefina, but I'm not sure which one it is. Anyways, it doesn't matter. For the most part, they're unique.
Got it. And I understand that the implant on Josefina's chest is hollow in the middle, so it's almost as if it was machined or cast. Am I understanding that correctly?
I haven't heard that, but we can check real quick.
Okay.
Because we can just look. But let me show you the integration thing that he was talking about.
Okay. Yeah.
It definitely integrates with whatever the skin is. Which, if it's skin, it looks like it has. It looks like there's some evidence that people have pointed out that looks like the skin has grown around it. Which would indicate that it wasn't done post-mortem. But of course, if that portion of the skin is not actually skin, but this kind of like slush mixture stuff, like a resin, then you could put the resin on it and shove the metal in, and then it would conform around it. So yeah, whether that's puzzling or not depends on what the skin is at that location, which I do not know. All right, so let's do this, and let's do this, and let's do this. And I was just going to try to slice through that in a way that's in line with the plane of the thing. That's pretty close. Let's try that.
There you go.
All right, so let's get closer so we can see, and actually let's make this box more like this. There we go. Let's go look. So it does look like, I don't know how to interpret this.
Right.
I'm not seeing, well, there is some difference in, I don't know. That's definitely beyond my non-specialist expertise to think about that. But let me show you, there is a kind of integration behind some of the plates that look like they're tied in with the rib cage. Actually, that might not be on this one. Artemis would probably be the better one to look at. But
so you don't think that? So you were saying that if I heard you correctly, that you're not too sure about the radiator hypothesis, or that there may be other hypotheses. What would some of those be as to the function of these implants?
Yeah, so we're going to have to arrange the hypotheses across the larger, higher order hypotheses, right? So under the assumption that they're alive, I don't know, like the Apple Watches of the alien world, it could be jewelry. It could be, some kind of communication device. It could be some kind of medical, should serve some kind of medical purpose, under the assumption that they are some kind of ritual doll or something like that. Decoration looks like the technology that was on the alien that you saw the other day,
Right.
that you're modeling this thing after. I don't know, right? Or the dream that you had where you encountered a being that looked like this, and right, like I don't know. I really don't know what to make of the kind of encounter phenomenon in general, right? Like I've been reading too much Jacques Vallée to be comfortable with the nuts and bolts kind of hypothesis, right? Like I don't know how to tie in the like fairy lore and other things of which there seem to be all these parallels. Jacques Vallée is high on my list of people to talk to. Hi, Jacques. Hopefully we get to talk soon. Okay, so let's see here. What was I going to do? I was going to show you. Oh, yeah, this is Artemis, I can show you how the plates kind of connect internally to the...
It looks like he's got a plate on his bum.
Yeah, lower back. That's right. And,
Okay.
the naming here is complicated, but under the assumption that eggs indicate femality, this is also a female. There's another one, or I'm not going to remember which one it is off the top of my head, but there's another one that doesn't have eggs, but has like a red, I mean, it's red because of the density, but there's some kind of an organic blob down in the belly, but not eggs. I don't know what that means, but
wow.
yeah, you can see here. Yeah, look at this. So I haven't tracked this down entirely across each specimen, but let's get that metal to be a little less noisy so we can see. You can see there's a bridge here, right? Mm-hmm. That kind of goes from the inside to the outside. Right. So under a hoax hypothesis, you could also assume that this was doing something like holding some of these ribs in place while they dry or something. But they're inconsistent. Yeah, it looks there's a connection there too. Yep, that looks like there's a connection behind that one. So yeah, I don't know. Hard to say. They don't serve the kind of structural role to really explain the really puzzling stuff, right? Like they seem to be more, they don't seem to be structural. They're all over in different places. And like where you would want there to be structure, like if you were building a Fiji mermaid, right? Like you're just taking, a monkey and a fish and you're cutting in half and then you stick it together so you can be P.T. Barnum and say, I found a mummy of a what did I just say? Mermaid. You'd need to reinforce across there, right? So where you would expect to see reinforcements is between the llama skull and whatever the spinal cord is. I can also show you here in Artemis, it's very clear how the spinal cord thingy just sticks up into the skull, which is one of the reasons why people have assumed have assumed constructions. Yeah, it just sticks up into the inside of the skull.
Wow.
Several of them are like that. Incidentally, if you did the work to go through the features inside the skull, they all line up with llama skull features too. But yeah, you would expect if you had metal plates for structural reasons, you would think you'd put them in the arms and the legs where you're joining the bones in and where you're adding on the arms. But there's no metal there, right? Like the placing of the metal looks more decorative or technological or meaningful. It looks more cultural than it does structural.
Got it. Going back to the eggs, you said there were things inside the eggs. Is there, what I wasn't able to tell, is there any sort of, did it look like a fetus inside of it, or what, is there any indication of what was inside the egg?
Yeah, good. I know that some people have suggested that there are structures inside the egg that look like a fetus. I will neither confirm nor deny that such a thing, because all I know how to do is what I just did, where I go slidey like that.
Right.
There's a thing you can do using DICOM software where you can like pick an object and then have it expand the densities out, and then you get a cool little 3D construct of something. But I'm not good at that, so I'm definitely not going to try to do it live. But I've not, so I can neither confirm nor deny that claim. I've heard such a claim.
Interesting. And so how many, like what percentage of the bodies in whoever's possession have some kind of implant? would you say? Like more than half, or?
I would ballpark it at half.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, ballparked at half, maybe slightly higher than that.
And there's no indication as far as like how the implants were adhered. You spoke earlier about like some kind of paste. Is there any indication that anything was used to adhere the metal?
You know what else would be great science is really good data on the surface texture, the surface composition of all of this, right? So we now have, for relatively low cost, you can get, in the like tens of thousands. I think Elena was pricing these out at like roughly 25K. You can get these scanners that you can just run along the surface, and it gives you like a really high level 3D scan of that. That would be a cool thing to have. That would be non-invasive. So like one of the things that's going to be tricky about getting more information is, even given the possibility that these are archaeological constructs, then they need to be treated with a tremendous amount of care and respect, right? Like, just like if you dug up a mummy from some culture that was obviously human, you wouldn't want to just do what we used to do, right? And like bring it home and put it in your living room and then cut it up with your buddies. Like, no, like that's a sacred object, and you should treat it with care and respect. So under the assumption that I'm running with, that this is some kind of an ancient construct, either living or not, I have no idea what these things are. But they would need to be treated with great respect. So we would need to be careful about, make wise decisions, thoughtful decisions, including indigenous people from the area and things like that, about whether we are allowed to dissect them. I would not feel comfortable just dissecting this thing, given the possibility that it's an important piece of archaeological cultural significance. If Mario just hacked it together, then it doesn't matter. We can cut it up. Although maybe not if it's made of human parts.
Right. So if I'm understanding you correctly, essentially, kind of what you're saying is that it looks as if these things were assembled, but there's no indication that they were assembled in modern times. There are no modern adhesives, things of that nature. So it seems to point that these things, if they were assembled, they were not assembled recently, and then that also then begs to question, if these things are a couple thousand years old, how would they have assembled it with the technology known at the time?
Yep. Yeah. So to date, and remember, more science pending, like we have more samples from these, and they're being analyzed over the next couple of weeks. So more results pending. But to date, no evidence of things that you would need. There's two things about these that indicate modern: the precision and the fact that they look like a TV alien. Mm-hmm. Right? But the materials so far do not indicate modern. They indicate ancient. Now, could Mario sit around with his buddies and come up with a really elaborate scheme where he decides to build alien-looking mummies out of other animal parts, and in order to continue the ancient alien thing, use only materials that were available in the ancient world to do that? Sure. But yeah, so that means that Mario is planning to sell them as ancient constructed ritual dolls, right? Or Mario knows that if you use a biological glue and superfine precise things, then it'll show up well in a CT scan. And again, maybe I've not met Mario, right? But like when you get to the point where you realize we have 25 full J-type bodies, we have at least another 20 or so loose J-type skulls. We have now getting close to a dozen M-type bodies, which we haven't talked about at all, and at least 3 S-type bodies. Like, Mario needs to have a pipeline, because like he needs to be making these things pretty regularly, right? Like Jaime Maussan and friends just announced that they have 2 more full-sized M-type bodies that they are haven't shown to the public yet. Some of my team have seen photos, but I've not seen any of those yet. Right, so not only does Mario have to have the capacity to do this, Mario and his team, he has to have the capacity to do it over and over and over again, right? Because he needs to make a lot of them now. And is there money in the air? Yeah. Is there motive to do it? Yeah, there is motive to do it. Although, you gotta wonder, I don't know. The whole hoax hypothesis, as I said this in the video, nobody other than Mario is acting like a hoaxer. Everyone's like, come and look at the scans. Like, I've had nothing but the friendliest interactions with Thierry Jameen and Joyce Mantilla and all the faculty at ICA, and they've all just been like really kind and really forthright and wanting to give me all the information that they can. And that's not how hoaxers act, right?
Right.
So is Mario acting like a hoaxer? To some extent, he's just like being shady and not showing people the source and making money. So yeah, if it's a hoax, it's got to be him and his team. And then you just have to imagine all the work that would go into it and all the forethought and all the art direction. Like, what a cool alien body, right? Like, why would you even think to make weird circular ribs? And why would you even think to do implants like this? And like, whoever's Mario's art director is, it's great work. So yeah, if it's a hoax, it's a hell of a hoax.
Well, and the other thing to consider too, as well, these metal implants, if they indeed end up being that they have a certain metallurgical composition with osmonium, or however you say it, and that being an extremely rare earth element, to me, that, like, if it were me, like, I would focus on the implants. I would do metallurgical analysis and figure out if these things are layered, if they look like they were produced in some way. And then if these things do indeed have a large amount of osmonium or imodium or whatever it is.
Osmium is the claim.
Osmium, there you go.
Imodium is a
oh yeah, I had that last
else,
night.
Anti-diarrheal, but yeah.
TMI. Anyway, but it's why would, if that is indeed the main composition of the implant, to me, that immediately proves that this is not something modern made. And then the other thing that I would say too that debunks the debunkers is, why would the government of Peru be fighting so hard to repossess these bodies if they are hoaxes, right? It's like if Mario has a machine shop and he's making metal implants off the lathe or the CNC machine and gluing all this stuff together, and as you say, it's like the amount of sheer work to do that and then to repeat it. Like I could say, if there were just like one of these things, and I'd be like, okay, maybe this guy spent 5 years building this thing and he did a really good job. But the sheer number of them, the fact that you've got these bizarre metal implants that seem to indicate no sort of form or design function, in my mind, it doesn't add up that it's anything as far as a hoax.
It's really hard to make the hoax hypothesis work, right? I totally agree. Like the level of skill and resources involved in doing this ground up as a hoax. And again, like, you can't use Mario, you can't use Jaime Maussan money until you're several years in, because, or at least several months in, right? Jaime wasn't involved until the Gaia documentary, right? Like, they had already been scanned and x-rayed and stuff by then. So his money wasn't used to make them, at least. And that gets you Maria and Josefina and Alberto, and I forget how many of them were on the table before Jaime money was involved. Who
are we looking at here?
Okay, so I wanted to talk. I like the J types. I find them very puzzling, but we should definitely talk about the M types, especially since your guest last week and the study from university is mostly about Maria. So Maria on the right, and this is Montserrat on the left. Montserrat is the one that is pregnant. And claims have been made about her fetus potentially being three-fingered. So there is no way I can get inside of her belly and show you anything that's helpful. So I'm not going to try. I can't go in there and you'll have a cute little baby skeleton with 3 fingers. Like it's messier than that with the level of decomposition. But she's definitely a human who was definitely pregnant when she died. And well, sorry, when I say definitely human, I know that I'm contradicting some things. Let me get back to, let's talk about M types.
Okay.
Okay. M types are anatomically human in every way, except for the hands, the feet, and the skulls, right? And as you know, there's a possible explanation on the table for the skulls, which is skull binding, although there is some evidence against skull binding. I was talking to Dr. Hernandez yesterday at University of Ica, and I think he's a radiologist guy. So I was asking him, are there differences? So there's lots of elongated skulls in that region of Peru. The Paracas people elongated skulls by binding, and I was asking him if there's differences between the skulls, and he very clearly articulated that there are important differences because when you bind the skulls, various things happen with the suture lines, and they didn't happen on these things. And so, okay, I don't know what to make of this claim. There's also the claim that the volume is too high on these, and if you squish the skulls, you can change their length, but you can't change their volume.
Okay.
And the volume on these is too high, so that claim is in the air. So weird skulls, maybe explainable by skull binding, maybe not explainable by skull binding. If it's skull binding, it's definitely during the lifetime. You can't skull bind a corpse, right? So under a hoax hypothesis, where you can't modify the head, you can't modify the skull now. You had to modify the skull when it was alive. So if someone today, if Mario turned these into 3-fingered corpses, which is the claim that's been made, he had to start with an already elongated skull body and then super carefully remove the fingers, the thumbs and the pinkies, and the big toes and the small toes. And then super carefully, well, okay. So if you take Montserrat has 1, 2, 3 phalanges and a tarsal, right? If you took my hand and cut off my thumb and pinky, and then you sliced in here, right? We have the long bones in here. You could get a hand, and you did that perfectly. You could get a hand that looks like Montserrat's hand. Now Maria's different though, because Maria has an extra bone in her finger. So in order to make a Maria hand out of a human hand, you'd have to start with a human hand, cut off these 2 fingers, slice down here, cut off the tips, the last knuckle of each finger, take somebody else's hand, cut off the 2 knuckles on them, and then attach them on to the end of this. And that's what you'd have to do to make a Maria hand. And as people look at these things, there are apparently, and I'm just taking people's word on this, no signs from the outside that that's been done, right? Now, again, it would be really great to have high-res skin scans of all of these weird hand tissues that are on the outside, right? Like, do we know that it's really skin? Do we know that there's really no seam? Is there some of this weird glue that looks like skin on the inside or on the outside joining the pieces? More science needs to be done, right? But if you imagine doing this to a dried out mummy,
right,
like that's going to be really damn hard to do, right. To make it look smooth and not have a seam. And as again, like these things are fragile, and like you cut into their. Actually, one of the reasons why people are upset about some of this is I think one of Maria's toes is broken off because of lack of handling well. And Thierry's been concerned about some of the ways that the samples have been handled. Unfortunately, there's some division internal to the people who take these seriously about how they're being treated, right? Because there's a lot at stake and these seem to be important and different people are treating them differently and people are upset. And anyways, this is messy situation.
I'm not upset.
Good. I'm glad you're not upset. Yeah. What we really need on the M types is DNA analysis. Okay, so we need DNA analysis on the M types. Like, can we look into their DNA and see, are they basically human? Do they have any special features that look like edits or that look like mutations, or like how do they relate to the indigenous people of Peru in the time period? Like, that's real work that's relatively easy to do. That needs to get done. We need to do protein analysis on the J types to figure out what all these bones are, what kind of things do they come from. That needs to be done. We also haven't talked about the S types yet. But yeah, how are we doing on time? We've been talking for a while now.
Yeah, about 2 hours. Do you want to quickly go over the S type, and then we'll wrap it up after that?
Let's look at S types, because S types are really weird and cool.
It's amazing there's so many of these things. And here's another thing, debunking the debunkers is, like, if you're going to make these things, like Mario's off in his shack building these things, as a builder, you would say, or I would think, you would be like, you know what, I'm going to just make one type and be really good at it. I'm not going to like reinvent the wheel 50 times and build totally different things. At least that's how I would think.
Yeah, so let me think like a debunker for a minute, right? Because that's helpful in trying to understand what's going on. So there does seem to be that with the J types, right? Which the J types would be the easiest to make if they're made out of llama skulls and animal parts, because you don't need to desecrate human remains to make a J type. M types are harder to make because you need, not only do you need a human mummy, but you need a human mummy with an elongated skull, right? So I don't know how many of those there are, but you need a lot of them. Yeah, you need like a dozen of them. What do you need to make an S type? I'm working on this. This one's really weird. Let me show you why they're weird. They're weird because they have these weird little wing bud things on the back. They're weird because they have this carapace looking thing on the bottom. Also tridactyl hands. Also the single boned forearms and forelegs. The skulls are just insanely weird. Because if you pull up the density, like there's this structure internal to the skulls, which is just wild. And before I accepted the llama skull thing, I was convinced that this was just definite proof that they were alien. But there is an important debunk here that I actually do at this point by, let me see. Oh God, where did when I remember what I did. Oh, can you see this? Okay. Yeah, we're back.
Yeah, I can see.
I need to talk. Well, remind me to talk about Jeremy Bentham in a moment. Okay. But a hypothesis is this is Suye's skull on the left and a llama mandible on the right. So there is a hypothesis that the skull of Suye was made out of more llama parts, actually the jaw, and that what we see inside of there is the bottom part of teeth. This seems pretty plausible to me, given that I've already accepted that Josefina's and her friends, their heads are made out of llama skulls. It makes a lot of sense that this is made out of a llama skull part. This is a great way to this is a great way to talk about Jeremy Bentham. Does the fact that the S-type skulls are llama skull, or sorry, S-type skulls are llama mandibles and J-type skulls are modified llama skulls, does that disprove that they're aliens? No, because it could be, as a burial practice, you took a body and you cut off its head so that you could do something else with it, right? We already know that the Nazca make trophies out of heads, for instance. Who knows if these are aliens? Who knows what aliens do with heads? You can imagine cutting off a head so that you could put it through the upload machine so that you could get all the memories out of it so you could keep talking to an AI version of it, right? Like, I don't know why you'd cut off a head, but you can think of lots of reasons to cut off a head. We have to talk about Jeremy Bentham, one of the original founders of the ethical school utilitarianism. So Jeremy Bentham's before John Stuart Mill. John Stuart Mill's the better utilitarian. Jeremy Bentham is like early toy, not as sophisticated utilitarianism. But when he died, he had a decent amount of money and he donated it to a university under the condition that they mummify his body.
Wow.
and remove his head and create a wax head that looked like him. And then they stored, for many years, they stored his actual dried head in between his legs. And then, of course,
that's what I want to do when I go.
Yeah, well, if you have enough money, you can make people do crazy things.
Yeah.
So students kept stealing his actual head, of course, so they no longer have that on display. But there's a real cultural example of severing a head intentionally, replacing it with a fake head for cultural reasons. So it really doesn't follow from the llama skull debunk alone or the llama jaw debunk alone that those bodies are not alien bodies, right? We would need more information in order to be sure that they are or are not alien bodies. Yeah, I did want to say that weird carapace-looking thing on the bottom of Suye. Sorry, let's make that go away. Really freaked me out for a while in trying to figure out what this thing is. And I was talking to oh dear God, I was talking to a paleontologist yesterday. Oh, this is bad. No, it's okay. We're okay. Where's my whatever? I'll do this. Great, good enough. And then I'll turn this down. I was talking to a paleontologist buddy yesterday who was suggesting that, and he's on Team Alien. He thinks these things are aliens. But he was suggesting that this structure at the bottom looks an awful lot like birds. What's the word for this? Sacrum, which you can see here, the green structure on the back. This is, I believe, a chicken. So it's not a chicken. It's different from Suye. But if you were gonna get in here and look at Suye's, where'd you go, Suye? If we do this and then do this, and yeah, this structure at the bottom does look a lot like that. It has some voids in the side. I was looking around trying to find birds. So here's my current running hypothesis on what Suye is. Okay. Suye is maybe a parrot. I haven't found a close enough 3D scan of the internals of a parrot, but I think you could take a bird and cut off. Let's look at our chicken again. You could cut off all the ribs. And then do the llama thing and with the jaw, and then add some arms and legs and make a Suye. So I'm pretty sure Suye is just a construct ground up. There's nothing quite as weird as there is inside of Josefina to make me still leave open some kind of alien hypothesis. So here's where I am, and this is why it's so important to spend as much time as we did thinking about this. Maria looks like an intact human. With modified hands and skull. Maybe that was done physically. Maybe it was done, physically with the skull, surgically with the hands. That would be remarkable and wild and crazy. Maybe it was done genetically. Maybe she's like a sister species from another planet somehow, but we're related to each other in some complicated way. I don't know. DNA is the tool for the M types and trying to figure out what they are exactly. What's a J type? A J type is a llama skull, carved exactly how I showed you, attached somehow to a torso that I don't know what it is. Pending more information, maybe we'll find another animal. Maybe one of your viewership will go find an animal and send me an email and say, it's this thing. I can tell you that the hips are not human hips, because when I sat down with my gynecological oncologist, he went back and forth through the hips in that DICOM, and he was like, these are not human hips. And then Suye, I think, is a bird modified with, I don't know what the arms and legs are. Anyways, so again, what's the conclusion? The conclusion is these are incredibly important and interesting and weird, and it's worth spending the time and effort to spend more time and resources trying to figure out what they are. I am highly skeptical of the modern hoax hypothesis for the reasons you pointed out. You essentially have to magically just assume that Mario has all of these various skills and tendencies and resources available to him. And then he knows how to do this with really, really fragile bones and using only glues and stuff that an ancient person could have, and right? So. Right. There's no simple answer here is the answer. And we could get more information if we have more time and resources. We will get more information as we get more time and resources.
So essentially, we need time and money and scientists that can look into this stuff. And they're clearly, there's something going on there. Essentially, you're saying that nothing points to, or very little points to proof that these things were assembled in modern times. And
that's right.
And there just isn't enough information at this point.
Let me say a couple more things, because yes, resources, time. We also need a lot of kindness and a lot of patience, and we need to stop attacking the people that are taking these things seriously.
Yes.
Right. We need to stop undermining the authority of our Latin American scientists and medical professionals and academics who are trying to look at this just because they're in Latin America. There's a lot of just like social stuff that we need to do differently. We need to kill this stupid stigma that we have for looking at this. Why can't I tell you who my protein guy is? Because although he does have the approval of his lab to do this, like, he's worried, right, that he's going to get associated with working on a crazy project, and then he won't be able to get a job at a different place if he wants a job at a different place, right? Like, so we need that. And then, sorry, you said something else I was going to say, and I forgot what it was. And that's what happens when I talk too much and I talk too fast.
No problem.
There was another cool thing, though, that I wanted to say. What was there? Your thing was we need time and money.
We need time, money, and scientists that are going to look into this.
Yeah, I don't know. There was something else, but I forget what it is. Whatever. You understand.
I totally get it.
Mostly, we need to stop being mean to each other and actually spend some patience looking at these things.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so I think so the jury is clearly out, but there is a considerable amount of compelling data on this.
Oh yeah. And if it is a hoax, then we should figure it out. Like, I want to see where Mario is doing this.
Yeah.
Like, I want to shake his hand and be like, dude, what a hell of a hoax. Like, I'm impressed.
So let's see. I've got a few couple questions here from the audience. Let's see here.
Hello, audience.
Okay, so Frick Johnson, thank you so much for the super chat. Nimsir, thank you so much. You're the absolute best at what you do. My gratitude and appreciation of all your efforts is insurmountable. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. Terrence Willis, real or fake? I'm glad Matt Ford is covering it and asking questions. 100%. Thank you so much. Kim Anderson, thanks for the super chat and for signing the petition. Hey, Mick West won't even sign the petition. That tells you everything you need to know about what Mick West's real motives are. Springer Mom, $9.99. Oh yeah, sorry, Springer Mom. Thank you very much for the super chat. Lenny Cat, keep up the great work. Thank you. Okay, from Fix Johnson, question: can these files and other related data be made publicly available?
That's a great question. If it were entirely up to me, the answer would be yes. It is not entirely up to me. I obtained these files via people who asked me not to make them public. So obviously I need to respect that decision. Now, why don't they want them made public? They don't want them made public for, in my view, good reasons. Because when you show this information to a person with relevant expertise, and what that person does is knee-jerk reaction, it's not real, it's a hoax, that hurts the thing that we're trying to make happen, which is getting more serious work done, right? And this is not hypothetical. This has happened many times. It's happened to me, right?
Wow.
Where I have given files to someone and they go, no, this is a fake. It's not worth my time, right? And so what I've been using personally as my test with who I share this with is like, will you sit down with me and let me show you why these are interesting? And then I will give them the DICOM files and I will allow them. And, out of that, I've had many fruitful conversations with people that have led me to the kinds of insights that we've been able to talk about today, right? So there is a danger in just dumping them to the public. So I know people have been worried, like, why are they hiding the information? And the answer is they're really not hiding the information. They want qualified people to look at it and actually look at it and actually take it seriously and not use their academic credentials to go online and say it's a fake, don't worry about it, right? That's the motivation for keeping them from just being in the wild, right? But the time might be coming where now there's enough stuff out where people know, hopefully, maybe this video can help, right? Maybe my upcoming video can help make people see why they are worth taking seriously, and then we can just let the data out. But that's not something I can do on my own. I need to talk to the people who paid for these scans and, have been working on this for a while. I want to make sure that I'm being respectful of the people who came before me. So that's where I stand on that. But I would like to see them released to the public soon, now that it becomes clearer why they are worth paying attention to.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Let's see, Damjan Mitvesky, thank you so much for the super chat. Sage Sleuth, much appreciated. Thank you. Bigfoot Pig Grande question. I'm not quite sure. I don't quite understand this question. Maybe you do. How to minimally conciliate the non-hoax stance with the llama skull conclusion? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So the minimal conciliation is, when you say hoax, I'm assuming the Mario hypothesis.
Right? Conciliate the non-hoax stance with the llama skull. So the non-hoax.
Yeah, so that is that there's no evidence other than there's two pieces of evidence that it's modern: the precision and the fact that it looks like an alien. I don't think that's enough to outweigh the pro-ancient reasons, right? The fragility of the skeleton, the materials that are in there. Forget the other thing. Well, there's also all the radiocarbon dating and stuff, which seem to indicate ancient, and right. So there's basically some reasons in favor of ancient and some reasons in favor of modern. And in my view, the reasons in favor of ancient are stronger than the reasons in favor of modern, unless you just assume that there's no aliens, which I don't think you should assume.
Yeah, I would say that. Michael Wells. I'm having my Earth suit encased in lucite and made into a floor lamp. I don't know if he's gonna sell that at the local what's the place where you buy all the furniture.
I buy my furniture at a thrift store, so I don't know where you get your furniture.
Well, hey, maybe in about I don't know how old Michael is, but let's say in 20 years you might be able to go buy a lamp made out of his lucite lamp.
All right.
Michael, thanks for that. That was funny. Let's see. Bigfoot Pig Grande question. Do you support the ancient hoax or puppet hypothesis?
I don't like hoax in the use of the ancient, right? But yeah, I support ancient construction. That's my leading hypothesis at the moment, personally. Not everybody agrees, but that's where I am.
Okay, let's see. Sergey, I'm bad with names. Thank you. Very entertaining and informative. Good work, team. Congrats. Thank you so much.
Woo!
Caleb Kent says Mick West signed the petition. There's not a snowball's chance of hell of that ever happening. Let's see.
Government transparency is good. Something's going on. Like, just sign the thing. Just sign the thing.
Yeah.
I did my part.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Xavier Bernard, what about organs? Bones get all of the attention. That's a really excellent question from Xavier. What can you say about the organs?
So M types have just like all the organs, right? And like you can kind of see. I can share this quickly. Can you still see my screen? Yep. Are we doing okay?
Yeah, you're good.
So remember the green line on the left is where we are in the torso. So you can see, there's all kinds of organismal stuff in here. That's what all these little gooey orby things in here are. So we have all the organs inside the M types. So like the M types are definitely human or human-like bodies ground up, except for the hands and the head, right? There doesn't seem to be a lot of structure internal to the S types, other than the eggs. There is some stuff in there. A lot has been made of various structures inside of the J types, and I don't know what to say about that. I showed you the inside of that. Like there's weird structure in there. So is some of that organs? Maybe.
Yeah. Great. Exploring Life 42, thank you very much for the super chat. Could you put up that original slide that had the 3 heads kind of on in a museum? I want to have a closer look at that.
This one?
Yeah, that one. Okay.
Yeah.
The guy on the one on the right looks exactly like Jason Colavito.
I like how you've latched on to what is clearly the least interesting head on this table, right? You're like, it's a stone head, no big deal. Right next to it, there is a apparently female head with either dried hair or rope, and then a rope coming out of her forehead. And you're interested in the stone one, but different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, I'm more interested in the one that looks like Colavito. So, there you go. Well, this has just been fantastic. So, how can folks support your work? You said you're coming out with a presentation. This will be another YouTube video, or how are you putting this out?
Yeah. So I'm going to do a talk at the Roswell UFO Fest. So if you're going to be there, I'll say hi to you virtually. I'm not going there personally, unless someone wants to pay for me to fly to Roswell next weekend, in which case I'll go to Roswell next weekend. But I will take that slide deck and, I'll edit it up and make a video out of it relatively quickly. So there will be a YouTube version of a fleshed out slideshow where I have a less hacky, buggy version of what we talked about today, with some other stuff that we didn't talk about at all today. We didn't talk about the art stuff that's all over the world. We didn't talk about the Star Child skull. There's other interesting stuff to talk about that's in the air. And it'll be on my YouTube channel. So I think if you just Google Stephen Brown philosophy Nazca Mummies, you'll find me.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Actually, one other question here from Shake Leather, big supporter of our show. If some of these are ancient compilations, what do you think about the possibility that these were recreated by a cargo cult that was visited by NHI in the past?
That's kind of what I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Like if you ask why does the best current place to look at data if you don't have access to the DICOM files is the Alien Project website that's run by the Inkari Institute with Thierry Jamin and those characters, right? The-alien-project.com, I think is what it is. If you go out there, Thierry and has these labeled where the J types they call reptilians and the S types they call insectoids, right? Now I don't call them that because I don't know what they are, and they don't seem reptile-like all the way through, and they don't seem insect-like at all, except for the kind of shape of that carapace and the wing-looking thing. But yeah, if you're going ancient construct, right? Then cargo cult is pretty close to what I think is the best hypothesis, right? Because, like, why would you make a thing that looks like a reptilian alien? Well, maybe because you encountered a reptilian alien. Why would you make a thing that looks like an insectoid alien? Well, maybe because you encountered a thing that looked like an insectoid alien, right? Now, I don't know what to make of the encounters. I really don't, right? Like, is it some kind of actual physical encounter? Is it some kind of consciousness thing? Is it some kind of, like, deep psychological archetype or something? Like, I really don't know. But whatever it is, here's the claim. Under the assumption that these are constructions, whatever it is that explains why they look like this is the same thing that explains why we keep having these experiences of these kinds of types of beings, and the same thing that explains why we see these art pieces all over the world that kind of reflect the same forms.
Yeah. Yeah, the only other thing that it doesn't explain is how Jason Colavito thinks he's qualified to write UFO books. I think he's more qualified to write books on underwater basket weaving, but who am I?
I would read a book on underwater basket weaving.
Yeah, Jason's good at that. Well, Dr. Brown, thank you so much for joining us. This was really great, very, very informative, and yeah, man, just keep up the great work. And look forward to
having to talk to you.
And hopefully we didn't scare you off, and you'll come back on the show. I'd love to have you back.
Nah, it'll be fun. Let's do it.
Awesome. Okay, great. All right. Well, have a great holiday weekend, and we'll chat soon.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, that was just fantastic. One thing I'd like to point out is, I rag on the debunkers all the time because I think they're full of it. But there's a difference between being a debunker where, like a good example. So on Twitter, I called out Mick West publicly and I said, hey, you say that you'll believe this UAP stuff if you can look at the data. So then I go back and I'm like, okay, great. Here's this legislation that is about to happen from Senator Schumer and Senator Rounds. And here's this petition that you can sign that will encourage them to put forth this legislation for the National Defense Authorization Act. And on top of that, it gives increased whistleblower protection. Mick wouldn't sign it. He gave all of these just crazy bullshit excuses, trying to just kind of weasel out of it in a weaselly debunker way. And he wouldn't even, and he said even something like, well, I forgot how he put it, but it's like, well, I don't even know what was in the last national defense, the last UAP disclosure amendment that was put forth last year. So, I replied to him, I'm like, dude, you have been saying things like staffers fresh out of college are fooling senators and congressmen and women who sit on the armed services and intelligence community. You're pontificating about this like you know what the hell you're talking about, and you won't even sign a simple petition. And then he comes back with another excuse. Mick West says something along the lines of, well, it's I don't know what's going to be in the legislation, and that's why I'm not going to sign the petition, or in so many words. And again, I'm like, dude, this is just a petition. This isn't like you're gonna, signing this, you're gonna legislate. All it is a letter saying, hey, Senator Schumer, we like that you're doing this. Please put forth this stuff. And oh, by the way, we like this thing about you protecting whistleblowers. And Mick West wouldn't even bring himself to sign that. I mean, to me, all that tells you. And actually, he replied, he's like, why are you so obsessed with me? And actually, I'm gonna read exactly what I wrote here. If I can bring up, I have my phone. Oh yeah, here I have it on my laptop. So I'm gonna read to everyone. This is kind of extemporaneous here. I didn't plan for this, otherwise I would have it very, very well laid out so that our show looks as professional as possible. Let's see here. Scrolling. Okay, so let's see. So Mick West goes, why are you so obsessed with me? Okay, that's a fair question. I do talk about the debunkers quite a bit. And I replied to Mick, because you are obsessed with UFOs and your acolytes reply to tweets of people who are seeking UAP transparency. You have an audience. You present this public persona as an unbiased debunker based on science and reason. And then also I kind of went off topic here, but I said you also promote Susan Gerbic, the Guerrilla Skeptics. Susan Gerbic, for those of you that don't know, you should look this up. There's this fantastic ally in all of this named Rob Heatherly, and he discovered that there is this huge group of Wikipedia editors run by this lady that they go through and they go and they manipulate Wikipedia. They attack academics. They attack scientists. They attack journalists. Like they'll go on an academic's Wikipedia page and basically vandalize the whole thing. So they're pushing this whole debunker theory. And then what's even crazier is Rob went and uncovered all of the conversations that they thought were private between the guerrilla skeptics and other people, where there's like all of this cyberbullying taking place. So I'm like, well, Mick West, why are you promoting this lady that is that is manipulating Wikipedia. Why is Mick West supporting this lady that engages, all of her people engage in cyberbullying on Wikipedia, and they end up getting booted off half the time, only to return. So anyway, so that was what that was referring to. So continuing on my most excellent reply to Mick West here, I said, you've made it clear that you'll only believe in UFOs when you see the data. Yet you won't even sign a simple petition that could bring forth the evidence you claim to be seeking. Your wiggling out of it is absolutely baffling. Baffling indeed, I would say. Additionally, as I continue, for someone so obsessed with this topic who constantly pontificates on it, you seemingly had no idea what was in the 2023 UAP Disclosure Act. Yet you have stated that congressional staffers have hoodwinked lawmakers into pursuing this. Again, this whole magical thinking and low information zone that Mick West continually operates in, and his cult following of debunkers. I call them debunkers because there's something going on up there. Anyway, and I continue here. As I've said time and again, skepticism is good. And I'm gonna depart for a second. So here we had Dr. Stephen Brown, who is presenting evidence as he sees it. He's saying, you know what? I thought I was right about this, but it turns out I was wrong. That is what a good skeptic, that is what a good scientist does. They are not married to an outcome. They understand that when different scientific evidence comes forth, that they may end up adjusting or completely changing their conclusion. That's what all of us should be doing. You know, if Dr. Brown came on here and said, you know, this is what it is, and F the data, we would have a guy on the show. He's no different than Mick West or any of these other bananas debunkers. So this guy comes in, he looks at the evidence and he's like, you know what, this could be a llama skull. I don't know if it is, but the evidence seems to point this way. And he has the right attitude, because at the end of it, he goes, you know what? I don't have all the answers. This is what I think it could be, but the only way that we will arrive at definitive proof is with money and science and time. And that's how all of us should be looking at this. If you're a debunker, such as Mick West and these others, you have already concluded, you've already reached what the conclusion is without having the evidence. You've come up with this hypothesis, and you've immediately jumped from hypothesis to conclusion. And in the middle, the way the debunkers work is they take whatever evidence that comes along, and then they kind of like distill it down to like super simple things, because they know that people tend to only latch on to one or two sentence length pieces of sound bites. So they latch onto this stuff and they go, oh, well, this is all assembled from a bunch of bones. It's a bunch of baloney. So when Dr. Brown is talking about why these folks don't release the DICOM data, I guarantee you it's because these bananas debunkers will take it and they will manipulate the narrative that ends up not being scientific, and they're not doing their work is really what it is. It's really just kind of a mental laziness that these debunkers, such as Mick West and others, continually and habitually engage in. Anyway, continuing on with this tweet, as I've said time and again, skepticism is good because folks look at it from a critical eye and are open to either outcome, just as what we saw with Dr. Brown here. On the other hand, debunking is a religion based on proselytizing, I can't pronounce my own words, proselytizing magical thinking, parentheses, I note here, the tweet where you posted that the Director of National Intelligence was not qualified to comment on satellite data of UAP comes to mind. Basically, I'm blanking on his name, but the ODNI director under the Trump administration went on Fox News and he said, hey, we see these UAPs coming in and out of the atmosphere on our satellite, our satellite-based space systems. And Mick's excuse was, well, he's in the Trump administration, so he doesn't know what he's talking about. I mean, give me a break. I'm certainly not a Trump supporter, but I'm not just because a guy works for Trump or worked for Trump doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's that same kind of just bananas magical thinking that these debunkers are talking. It's like a fountain of bullshit that comes out of Mick West's mouth and these other folks. It's obscene. So on the other hand, debunking is a religion based on proselytizing magical thinking. The tweet where you posted that the director of national intelligence was not qualified to comment on satellite data of UAP comes to mind. And parentheses there, and convincing the world your viewpoint is right. I conclude in my reply to Mick West. Clearly, you have no interest in seeing data because you don't want to be proven wrong. It's the only explanation why you would not sign a simple petition calling for UAP data to be released and increased whistleblower protection. And then I did the whole hand emoji thing. And then I added another tweet, or you're on somebody's payroll. So, I mean, who knows? I have no idea. I mean, the guy just could be disconnected from reality and living in his own world of magical thinking and low information zone and editing Wikipedia for Susan Gerbic and all of that. Anyway, so basically what I'm saying is that there is a significant difference when you have someone like Dr. Brown come on and he is being academically honest and scientifically honest, and he is open to changing previous conclusions when new data comes along. That's what real scientists do. That's what real academics do. That's what all of us should be doing. Leaving ourselves open to the fact that, you know what, we could be wrong. I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, I've seen this stuff appear above my home. I don't think it's from here. It certainly doesn't behave like it is. But hey, if somebody shows me data that it's swamp gas coming off of my hot tub or something like that, you know what, I'll be open to that. You have to be open to being wrong. You don't want to be a debunker who the debunkers are essentially no better than any propagandist that you would see in any sort of third world country. They're just kind of full of garbage, and I certainly wouldn't believe much of what they say. And again, to emphasize, there are skeptics and there are debunkers. It is good to be skeptical and not believe every single thing you're told, to look at it with a critical eye, look for the faults in the information, look for the faults in the conclusions, and and decide whether it is true. Skepticism is good. Being a debunker, well, I don't know. That's what you want to spend your time doing. As I've said to like Mick many times, it's like this dude spends like 40 hours a week on this stuff. And I say this to all the debunkers. It's like, if I think that Chewbacca is real, like I'm like, you know what, folks, Wookiees are real. They walk the earth. One of them hangs out with Han Solo. All of that was real. And one of you said, Matt, you know what, actually turning it around. If somebody came to me, like if Dr. Brown came to me and said, look, my research indicates that Wookiees are real. We have one in some lab in Ohio State University. I'd be like, hey man, if you think Wookiees are real and you think Chewbacca was a real person, not somebody in a suit, I'd be like, hey man, knock yourself out. And have fun with it. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my days, 40 hours a week on Twitter or on this bananas meta garbage website, tweeting about that Dr. Brown thinks that Chewbacca is real. I'd be like, hey, Dr. Brown, knock yourself out. Go have fun with your Chewbacca friends. I don't believe it, but you know what? I've got better things to do with my time than to sit and tweet about you and your Chewbacca stuff all day long. So, so when I look at these debunkers, I'm like, this is stuff that you guys say you don't believe, but you spend all of this time talking about it. You spend all of this time talking about me or Garry Nolan or Lou Elizondo. It's Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, and the other thing that I'll point out as well is all of these debunkers, they rely on shows like this, other podcasts, other people that are trying to get to the truth. Without us, they would not have anything. Which, of course, I hear a lot of people say, hey, Matt, you're giving air to the debunkers, you're giving them oxygen. And that is indeed a fair criticism. My counter argument would be is that they're not going anywhere. They're out there spitting, just vomiting all of this just illogical garbage. So I choose, because I have a platform and people watch, and I know that there are lots of people in Congress and staffers that watch this show. I'm gonna call these people out, because if you've got somebody like Mick West going on CNN claiming that he is this unbiased scientist, and we know he's not a scientist. He's I don't know what the hell he is, but anyway, he's not a scientist. He's certainly not an academic. But here's this guy that goes on to CNN and much like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye the not so science guy, these guys go on media and convince the public that all of this is garbage. And that's a whole issue with like the whole Wikipedia thing. Wikipedia is the 7th most trafficked site in the world. So when you've got Susan Gerbic and her Guerrilla Skeptics monkeys out there messing with Wikipedia, somebody that doesn't track this topic or hasn't taken the time to really look into it, like 99% of the people, everyone's busy, they go to Wikipedia and they see this garbage. Or they turn on CNN and they see Mick West there saying that it's all seagulls flying around, and that the Tic Tac was actually a balloon that a U.S. submarine released, and it just kind of floated around. And our military pilots that have tens of millions of dollars in training mistook it for some kind of Tic Tac or non-human craft. And it goes back to this whole debunking thing. So for those of you that have never heard of this organization, I want, after you sign the petition, because Mick West won't do it, so I need you to do it, go to uapdisclosurefund.org and sign the petition to encourage Senator Schumer and Rounds to go forth with a second version of the UAP Disclosure Act. I lost my train of thought. Wow, it's the first time that's happened to me in a while. I took my Adderall this morning, and I guess it must be wearing off. But anyway, so. Oh, I know where I was going. Okay, so after you go to UAP Disclosure Fund, I want you to look up the Center for Inquiry. CFI is the organization. It is a nonprofit based out of Amherst, New York. Center for Inquiry is basically a giant debunking media propagation outfit. They have well in excess, I think last year when I looked at the IRS filings, they had well in excess of $5.3 million of donations, many of which, by the way, were from international wires from foreign countries in very large amounts. But basically this whole organization, their whole goal is to proselytize, can't really say it right, proselytize debunking. And guess who is on their board of fellows? Their board of fellows is kind of like the who's who, the people that they put up and they worship in this kind of debunking cult. Mick West is on the board of fellows. Susan Gerbic is on the board of fellows of Guerrilla Skeptics. Neil deGrasse Tyson is on the board of fellows for this debunking propaganda outfit. And Bill Nye, the not-so-science guy, is on there. So once again, time and again, this happens over and over and over. You have these clowns that go onto mainstream media. You have Neil deGrasse Tyson, who probably can barely read a scientific report, let alone write one. You have guys like him going in front of the media and saying, oh, there are no space aliens or this or that. And and the way they talk about it, you think that they've done the research, you think that they've done peer-reviewed papers, you think that they are unbiased, you think that they have scientific curiosity, but at the end of the day, Neil deGrasse Tyson and Mick West and these other folks that proclaim to be scientists or have scientific curiosity, they don't have any of that. They are there to be propagandists. It is no simpler than that. And the sad part about it is the average American that is busy putting food on the table and putting clothes on their kids. They don't have time to sit and listen to a 2 hour 45-minute show that we have so far. And I'm about to stop my rant here. Most people don't have time to look into this stuff. So when they go and they tune in CNN and they see Neil deGrasse Tyson say it's all bunk, or Mick West come on and say it's all bunk, or Bill Nye, the not-so-science guy, come on and say it's all bunk, people go, well, these guys must be scientists. They must know what they're talking about. Certainly Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's got a lot of money. He's got to know what he's talking about as a scientist. But they don't. It's pure entertainment, and it's intellectual dishonesty at its core. So go look up Center for Inquiry. You'll see the kind of garbage that they have on there. And and you know what? Send Mick West a tweet on Twitter and ask him, hey Mick West, why won't you sign a simple petition advocating for the UAP data that you've been asking for? And by the way, why aren't you supporting legal protections for whistleblowers? I don't know. It makes no sense. Anyway, folks, if you enjoyed our show, we would appreciate it, as always, if you would hit that subscribe button and leave a comment. There's so many of them now, I'm having a hard time keeping up, but I do try and read all of them. Also, I especially want to thank our chat moderators. This show has been very long. These folks take time away from their families and their day off on Sundays to moderate the chats, and they do it. They don't get paid. They're doing it because they believe in this. They believe in the show, and they also believe in giving all of you at home that are engaging in the chat a safe place to go and talk about this stuff without being attacked and all of that. But anyway, I really want to thank those folks. And as I always say, please tell your friends about us on social media. If you're on Twitter or on X, we would certainly appreciate a follow. We're very slow to grow there. The more people who watch, the more we can spread our message on this vital topic that all of us deserve transparency. We deserve to know what is going on. And that's the best way to put it. Anyway, we'll see you with more great guests next week on The Good Trouble Show.